What moronic empty gestures has your job made for the benefit of the employees? Today, my employer held a catered leadership conference for managers only, aiming to improve employee morale. Essentially, the managers were all brought into the conference room, played team-building games, and had breakfast and lunch catered for them. This is because it was noticed that general employee morale was low and there was a high turnaround for the entry-level worker. What actually happened was most employees had to skip lunch, work overtime, and take on many extra tasks in order to make up for all the absent managers. This made the entire staff bitter and created an us versus them attitude in the workplace. Wait, you have managers who actually do stuff? To the point where you have to work harder to make up for their absence? Man, must be nice. Our company created a Facebook page and sent out an email with the link to everyone's work accounts, advertising it and asking everyone to like them on Facebook. Facebook is blocked at my work, by the way. Mine is doing the same. They want us to promote a product and even set up a game with links to Facebook and Twitter. I guess they expect you to participate from home or something. I just might win a free water bottle, fingers crossed. Ugh. My old company was having a morale problem. Me and my workers had been pulling serious overtime trying to get all of the work done. For 2 weeks straight, we'd essentially come in at 7:30 a.m. and left at 6:30 p.m. without taking lunch. Finally, after we'd started openly talking about how angry we were that we were doing these hours and were still getting complained at for making tiny errors here and there, they decided to reward our department with lunch. When our lunch hour came, the four of us walked in to find all the food had been eaten by the managers, and they'd left us 2 egg rolls and a handful of fried rice. Morale had never been higher. In my place of work, we've gotten extremely busy in the last few months. They expanded their stores into Florida. Instead of giving the employees much needed or deserved raises, we got oranges. Yep, oranges. They thought they were being clever being in Florida and all. Just made me angry. Creating an on-the-second policy. You have to be at your desk exactly the second your workday begins. This has created an atmosphere where they find it really hard to get anyone to do anything extra. On the second the workday ends, everyone leaves. Before we didn't care about a minute or two here and there. Yeah, I've never heard of this policy being implemented without this predictable and warranted result. Turns out most people will work pretty well on a task-based workload and resent being policed at all times. I used to work in catering as a chef, and we once catered a company-wide going-away party for the head of a large local company that makes exercise equipment. The reason that the company head was leaving was to go on a Mormon mission, but that's neither here nor there. The executives ate on a dais at the head of a large conference room, elevated a few feet above the ground. They ate smoked beef tenderloin with a Calvados demi-glace, haricots, roast new potatoes, Caesar salad, and all manner of breads and rolls, with handmade chocolate mousse in a champagne glass for dessert. The employees, on the other hand, were left to mill about on the conference room floor and enjoy their fully catered meal of donuts. Yep, they got to eat crappy store-bought donuts and watch their bosses and managers enjoy a multi-course, fully catered meal in full view of the masses of peons. That was close to 10 years ago, and it still leaves a bad taste in my mouth. My company has an annual trip for people voted as MVP from each office location, plus executives and salespeople who make quota. The trips are usually very fancy, all expenses paid affairs with tons of swag. Cut to the height of the Great Recession. We have our quarterly town hall meeting. The CEO stands there in front of a screen, showcasing photos from this trip. I'm talking about pictures of people receiving fancy watches and going on helicopter rides. Whilst these photos are showing, he gives a speech about tightening our belts, no raises that year, and all salaried employees having to take 2 weeks off without pay. This is with pictures of him and all the other execs in the background, drinking champagne on a helicopter behind him. People were angry to say the least. Our company decided to give out a weekly prize to randomly selected employees as a way to boost morale. The winner's name, title, and prize was emailed to everyone in the company. Some of these prizes were things like iPads and TVs, so at first, this seemed cool. Then we started realizing that the people who won the big prizes were all VPs and above. Lower-level employees won things like a tote bag full of promotional materials. Now, whenever a regular person wins, he or she gets a flood of congratulatory emails from bemused coworkers. Congrats on winning that plastic cup, John. You must be so proud. In order to improve morale, my previous employer set up a suggestion box. When people anonymously submitted their gripes, management got frustrated and said we had to put our names on our suggestions. What's the point of a suggestion box if it's not anonymous? If I'm going to put my name on it, I'll just email you directly. I don't suppose it was for the benefits of the employees, but I worked at a stationery store that sold DVDs, CDs, and the like, W.H. Smith. They had a management meeting about security and shoplifting. So, already short-staffed, the supervisors, managers, and security guards spent 2 hours upstairs nattering. Worst day for shoplifting the store had ever had. Hilarious. I was knocked back from an internship at a world-leading insurance company last year because when you showed up you looked a bit like an IT guy. Considering I was applying for an IT internship and my technical background is IT, I have no idea what this human resources goon was expecting. HR is terrible. When I was hiring here, my interviewer basically gave me tips to lie to HR to make it easier for myself. This was my bonehead move. I was new to managing in the taxi world and thought, hey, let's throw a barbecue and get to know everyone. Turns out a lot of Muslims are taxi drivers and that Ramadan is kind of a big deal. Well, now I throw what I call a Hala BQ a few days before Ramadan starts. It's pretty nice. When I worked at McDonald's, there was a month where they put a digital scale by the shake machine. We had to zero out the weight of a cone each time and make sure that every customer was getting exactly 5 ounces of ice cream. A cone with too much got thrown out. It's hard to appreciate the difficulty of making a cone, let alone a perfect one. This just ended up being a massive waste of time and money. Congratulations, you've won a dinner with your boss. Ugh. I actually wouldn't mind that, depending on the boss. If you've got a good boss, it would be a good opportunity to voice some concerns. If you've got a bad boss, it's a good chance to become buddies, since lousy bosses always seem to favor their friends over others. I work in the back room of a large retail store. We're understaffed with hours cut and the only section of the store to run independently after 3:30. We have one supervisor. Yet we have the highest rank in the nation in terms of speed and accuracy. We still get called lazy by the higher-ups. Our grocery and pharmacy outlet was involved in a company-wide push to boost profits over the holiday season. If we came out on top with the greatest percentage increase over all other outlets, then we'd receive a handsome Christmas bonus. We came out on top, but the only ones to reap rewards were upper management. Among the 30-plus employees, we would have stood to make nearly $1,000 apiece for our hard work during the holidays. Instead, management split it amongst the top 3, giving them a little under $10K each. Those who complained were fired and given crap excuses why. I don't work for that crap company anymore, nor do I ever have to see the greedy management that kept me and my family from my rightful Christmas bonus. Screw them. We think it's in your best interest to not know how much the company pays of your insurance premium. Turned out it was 0%. A motivational speech was given to some of our assembly guys, and 2 of their managers were trying to get them to see the importance of working hard as a team. Here's what they had to say. Just think about slave ships. If everyone didn't keep rowing through the storm, the boat would capsize and they'd all drown. I mean, as moronic as these guys are, I appreciate how forthright they are with their view of the employees. Now you know that you can treat the job with the same enthusiasm as someone being neither paid nor treated well. My wife is always flabbergasted at the crap my company wastes money on. The lamest was wooden back scratchers with the company logo on them that they handed out to everyone. I used to work at a movie theater as a supervisor and later a projectionist. While we were making the transition to digital projectors, we were informed that we'd be keeping 1 or 2 of the old film projectors in case one of the movies we were showing wasn't available in a digital format. They told us they were going to keep us on, but gave us extra duties to justify the 80% reduction in workload. It seemed fair. Fast forward a few weeks and we got the heads up that they wanted us to train a couple of managers on how to thread up a film projector and start it. They then had a giant appreciation party for us at a local go-kart track, where at the end they told us that the managers were all going to be handling the projection equipment from then on. They then offered us jobs as part-time regular employees, starting at minimum wage, with an adjustment based on other merit raises we'd been given. I would have gone from 40 hours a week at $13 an hour to 25 hours a week at $8.75. On the last go-kart race, I ran the general manager into a wall at 30 miles per hour. At my firm, we used to have the CEO that felt really entitled and was just a huge jerk. The company HQ was in a 3-story building with 2 stairways, one on each end of the building. His office was next to the stairway entrance on one end of the building. For some reason, he believed this was an executive staircase and only he was allowed to use it. Whenever he found another employee in it, he'd yell at them and threaten to write them up. So, all employees had to use the other stairway regardless of where their office was in the building. It was such a huge inconvenience. Well, we all had the last laugh. He went on this great vacation to Europe, and little did he know that while he was gone, the board of directors had fired him. His company vehicle was removed from his property, his access to company networks was revoked, his keycards were deactivated, and his office was packed up and placed outside the building the morning he arrived. He was truly blindsided. He came in claiming his car was stolen only to see it parked in front ready for the next CEO. Karma. I work at a theatre, and we were pushed to sell these membership cards to 2% of our guests. At the end of the year, we ended up being one of the few theatres that ended up doing it. So instead of giving everyone their bonuses or raises or even a thank you party, the GM got to fly all the way to California and Las Vegas. We also hadn't had anyone internally promoted within the last year or so. The last 2 positions that were open were filled from the outside. Needless to say, everyone was really mad. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Our VP's speech at the annual employee meeting. Now, we're all about work-life balance here, but we have to work harder and longer. Mental fricking pygmy. You know, it seems like most of these companies' plans was to unite them around a common enemy, the managers. Every year, my hotel holds a staff party at which door prizes are given away. Our main competitor had theirs the week before, and staff with friends and spouses at that hotel reported back to us about the party's door prizes. iPhones, iPads, mini fridges filled with beer or groceries, the grand prize being a week for 4 at any hotel in their chain, including airfare and meals. Then our party came and my company's crapulence was revealed. All the door prizes were free 3 nights at specific hotels in our chain, no airfare, nothing else. Crappy hotels in non-destination cities and towns. 3 free nights in a hotel you had no desire to see, in a city you had 0 reason to visit, and the prize winner had to cover their own airfare into the bargain. Staff morale plunged to an all-time low when 1 month later the managers all had their weekend advance on a 4-day weekend at a nearby 5-star resort, all expenses covered including golf and sailing. When Circuit City was still around, I was a warehouse manager. The company was struggling from spending too much on planograms and such. So, what did they do? They spent tens of millions developing a new POS system called RPOS, which we lovingly called our piece of excrement. I actually worked in the test store that was the first to get it in the nation. We had the dev team in for months working out kinks that we'd find and whatnot, and I discovered a pretty major flaw. The system would just randomly lose items in inventory, like $4,000 TVs on a daily basis. I told them about this all the time and they said they'd reevaluate or something. They didn't believe me and it had to be human error. So, when the next distribution truck came in, we took complete inventory before accepting the shipment into our POS. And wouldn't you know it, we were immediately missing 25 grand in merch. So, what did they do? They never fixed it, pushed it out to stores, and subsequently went bankrupt. And the old system wasn't even bad. Sure, it was dated, but once you knew the way around, it was gold. My workplace has yearly mandatory barbecues. They call them meetings. The meeting lasts for about 20 minutes and the rest is barbecue and pool and stuff. Sounds awesome, but it is mandatory that you show up and it is mandatory that you bring some food. You will be written up and or fired if you don't. So they scheduled this year's barbecue meetup in the middle of the day on a day I already never work because I go to school. I kept telling them I couldn't miss a day. I'm in a really competitive program. As in 200 people trying to get into an 18-slot program, so I absolutely can't mess up. My bosses said if I didn't show up, I'd get fired. So, I didn't show up. I actually forgot. I was just going to show up late originally. Then no one said anything and no Fs were given. I saw the photos on Facebook and it just seemed really lame. All the stupid cliques were there, same old bullcrap, just outside of work, not getting paid for it. And I'm sure that at each barbecue they ask, "Why is nobody having fun? I specifically requested it." I don't get it. Surely these managers have their own social lives that they have to sacrifice in order to hold these things? How are they not as annoyed about them as you are? I'm not even joking. I was deployed in middle-of-nowhere Afghanistan in 2002, and my jerk colonel tripped over a rock walking from the command tent to the latrine at night. 30 minutes later, me and the other lowest-ranking airmen were outside picking up rocks with flashlights near the perimeter of the base in the middle of the damn night. I never thought I might die for a more stupid reason than I did that night. All raises were cut for the last 3 years and replaced with gifts. Flowers year 1, lunchbox year 2, and an umbrella year 3. All were of cheap quality and clearly designed for women. I'm a male nurse, or a nurse. Yay! I just left my gifts at work. At my office, we hired a mediator to come in and address some of the workplace concerns. Our communication and interaction with one particular employee was lacking. This employee had a competitive nature that borders on overbearing and uncomfortable. The mediator broke us all into pairs of 2 and asked us to arm wrestle with each other, and the winner of each match would receive a chocolate. Each group was given a bag of chocolates. Well, everyone split up and performed the task. Everyone just communicated that neither participant cared about winning and just wanted the chocolate, so everyone just split the bags. Except for the one employee we had issues with. She dominated her opponent and got every last piece of chocolate. The mediator was befuddled, gave a little speech, and left. We learned nothing. In short, mediator had our office do team-building exercises, realized we were beyond help, and left. My company really wanted to get the employees involved and excited about the new direction of the company in terms of rebranding and new marketing strategies. So they spent a lot of time trying to get people excited by the future and where we were going, and of course none of us in my office appreciated it given that they'd announced a week earlier that our office would be closed and all our work would be moved out of the country. Most people here felt like we were constantly being told how great things would be once we were gone. Insult to injury, the aggressive new marketing used the product we developed as the flagship product. When I was 20, I was the lead supervisor on a program evaluation contract, supervising 45 employees. The project was finished when I was out of the office. I worked 12 through 8 p.m. It finished around 10:30 that morning. My boss called and told me it was finished and everyone was going out to eat to celebrate. So I said, "Oh, I'll come in now, give me a few minutes." And she said, "Great, we need you to come supervise the other team, who wasn't on that project, while we go." So freaking stupid. Everything at that job was stupid, including letting a 20-year-old develop an evaluation for a statewide program on green jobs just out of the blue. I made the whole thing based on a few Wikipedia articles. Screw it. It was really successful and a lot of other states use it now, but I ultimately got fired for wanting to be paid the same amount as the other supervisor whose team didn't do as well as mine. But it was a boys' club, so I got fired. Jerks. The company held a meeting where people actually have to travel and get hotels in the home city, including the CEO. The meeting was something where the CEO was supposed to talk about the state of the company and stuff like that. Morale was generally low because they'd been cracking the whip on everyone for the last 2 years. Everyone was working 10 to 16 hours a day, sometimes on the weekends too, on a salary. So, the CEO starts talking, making his presentation, and towards the end of the hour, the hotel staff start setting up chafing dishes and setting food out. Everyone's really hungry. The Q&A period is prolonged for an extra hour because people keep asking dumb questions. So, finally it ends and everyone lines up for food. It's fettuccine alfredo or something, and it's quite disgusting after sitting in the dish becoming lukewarm after an hour. To top it all off, the CEO, in front of everyone, says, "I'm not eating that crap, it's full of carbs." He leaves everyone to go out to a, quote, real restaurant. Some of the execs stayed behind to eat with the employees because they knew what this D-bag had just done. He also did something similar during the company Christmas party several months earlier. He traveled from his home state to the state where most of the employees were, showed up for about an hour, then asked one of the young salespeople, "Where are the good clubs to go for getting decent drinks and a decent dinner?" He then took off the rest of the night, leaving us to eat the dinner served at the party. I quit quite a while ago, and he was replaced about a year later. Unfortunately, I've worked under CEOs that were much, much worse. My manufacturing company has an on-site company picnic every year with big giveaways for all employees, but you have to be physically present to win. So, night shift and anybody stuck in the factory working can't win. Just the folks whose job is unimportant enough to stop working for 5 hours and play sack races with upper management. Even when I can go, I refuse to. I make sure to wave when I drive by the picnic area when I'm driving out to a quick McDonald's lunch. It infuriates me. Thomson Reuters axed our Christmas bonuses so that we could have 4 52-inch TV screens that displayed Sky News, company stock results, company predictions, and security systems. Back when smartphones weren't super popular, my manager texted me some crap like, "Wow, any large pizza for just $10? Tell your friends to order now, blah blah, etc., corporate monster crap. Then they instructed me to pass it on to my contracts. I proceeded to use the good old fill the 10 recipient slots with the same contact and send it right back to her, and then resent about 15 times, causing her phone to be unable to do anything but receive my messages, one at a time, 150 times. She didn't send me bullcrap marketing texts to forward after that. I wonder if that still works on modern phones. Just pasting someone into the contact slot of the SMS feature of our phones that most of us barely use anymore? It was so fun getting your schoolmates into trouble doing this. The cookie incident. I was working as an IT technician for a big corporation. After September 11th, people were stressed out and our manager thinks we need a morale boost. He created some random appreciation tokens, which were nothing but tickets for theater plays that were cancelled a week earlier, discounts for car rentals and hotel stays. Basically just unused corporate coupons that were laying around in his office. I was bitter about not being nominated or any of my team, even if our performance numbers were better than many of the winners. We knew all of the winners were brown-nosed morons. But this time, the universe did justice. 2 days later, a regular user baked a big batch of cookies and sent them to my team. When I thanked her and asked her the reason for her kindness, she just said, "This is for all the times you guys helped me." That was way better than any random coupon. Basically these, among other things, we have bake sales even though we're all techs and there's about 3 people in the entire office who like baking. We have sports events despite the fact that very few people actually play sports. Oh, and the flash mob, so poorly executed, was intended to end up as a YouTube viral video thing. It was laughably bad. The saying, "could not organize a bender in a brewery," comes to mind. And of course, this final one, which I must stress, was not a joke. My team, for having the best performance worldwide, was given, and I crap you not, chocolate medals. I don't know if it's a US thing, but in the UK that's basically an insult. For context, sales guys got laptops and TVs right before we got our medals.
Hey Reddit, which double standard irritates you the most? The other day, I got a new iPhone from AT&T. I told the salesperson I didn't want to make any changes to my account. 2 days later, I get an email saying, "Congrats on signing up for cell phone insurance for $9.99 a month." Not once did this salesperson utter the words cell phone insurance. If I walk into an AT&T every month and steal $9.99, I would go to jail. When a salesperson steals an extra $9.99 a month from me, they call it cross-selling and don't see anything wrong with it. Work over 12 to 15 hours a day to get your project in by deadline is fine, but don't you dare show up 5 minutes late the next day. Paid based on a 40-hour week, trend towards 50 to 60 hours on average. Edit, should point out that I love the job and I feel I get paid a good rate. Just annoyed after getting called out by the sales staff who don't have to pull extended shifts. I work for a small business, 8 employees. Smokers, 4 of the 8 of us, are allowed smoke breaks whenever they feel like it. We aren't given regular coffee breaks or lunch, during which they aren't required to punch out or put anything other than, and I quote management here, a reasonable time limit on. I don't smoke, but I do like a bit of fresh air every now and then, so I go outside for 3 to 5 minutes and check my email or read the news on my phone. This is completely unacceptable to my boss because, and let me quote her directly again, "Phones are an addiction that waste company time." I asked her why smokers aren't held to the standard, and I was told, quote, "Smokers need to smoke. You don't need to read the news." A double standard imposed on me by my mother-in-law. Conversation happened earlier. Mother-in-law, "If I ever catch you cheating on your wife, I'll cut you with a machete." Me, silent. Neighbor, "But, Mother Lily, your sons are horn dogs and have different children from different mothers. Are you going to cut them too?" Mother-in-law, "Now why would I cut my own sons?" P.S. I don't cheat on my wife. My hippie friends who believe modern medicine is evil and that chemicals are dangerous, to the point of never taking paracetamol or even believing things like vaccines are bad. Maybe I use the word friends too broadly. But they don't give a crap about snorting white powder that they've bought from a guy they barely know, which is very likely 20% actual white powder and 80% miscellaneous white powder. The irony is that most of that miscellaneous white powder is probably paracetamol. 5-minute smoke break? Sure. 5 minutes for fresh air? Screw you. Get back to work. Acknowledging the existence of children trying to interact with me. I'm a guy. Example. Was a cashier and this kid with some mental disorder, Downs I think, always loved to talk to me when his parents were going through cash. His dad said he always remembered me. Long story short, got hauled into the office by my boss, and I was told my behavior was inappropriate for talking to a kid about food. Manager, you need to be a team player and help your team out. Sits in her office all day not doing jack squat. People, I want more art, music, movies, and other forms of entertainment. Also people, I don't want to pay for any of it or it isn't worth my money. Saw this one firsthand in a store once that made me laugh. Mother, all you do is waste your time playing video games. Teenage kid, you're on Facebook as much as I'm playing games. Mother, long pause. That's different. Parent, you're wasting so much time playing those stupid video games. Followed by the parent watching TV from the moment they get home till they go to bed. This one drives me up a wall because this is what my parents like to do, specifically my mom. She doesn't do it anymore, but back when I was growing up and trying to make friends and actually interact on social spaces, she didn't understand that because it was all online that, somehow that doesn't mean anything. You have to go out and make friends. Mom, I'm making friends. Now that I have a job and make money using the internet, she doesn't yell at me, but it's that's still worth something. Mom and dad stereotype. My husband is an excellent father, but people always ask who's watching the kids when they aren't with me. Their dad? People. Oh, so he's babysitting today? Me. No, he's taking care of his freaking kids. When my political party does X messed up thing, it's okay. When yours does it, it's wrong. We won't hire you unless you have 5 years of experience working this exact job. Your uncle's cousin already works here? Welcome aboard, person with 0 experience. This post is from 6 years ago, and I like how this has happened so often that we now have a word for it, which is Nepo baby. As a teacher, there are times I would love to be able to put an arm around a student who is crying, or have a student come back to my room for extra help if they are struggling. But I'm male, so that can't happen. We are literally told by our administration never to do any of that if we are male. I understand the concern, but to the point where you literally can't offer any support to a student because of what might be taken out of context, that's doing way more harm than good. Dancing. I don't like to go dancing because I don't understand what you're supposed to do. You just dance. Do whatever feels right. Does dance. No, not like that. There's no one right way to dance, just as there's no one wrong way to subscribe to Am I the Genius and Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. As always, thanks for watching. I'm a lady. I can't stand how men aren't allowed to be caregivers, or like children. Man can't comfort a child or be at a park with his own without being accused of a crime. Man wants to stay at home with the kids? He's lazy and making the woman do all the work. It's crap. Equality means that men should be allowed to do the same roles as women and vice versa. I'm a male substitute teacher, and when I first started, another male sub told me, do not ever spend a second with a child by yourself. He also said, do not ever get too close to the kids and keep your hands visible at all times. A week later, I was caught with the student alone because she needed a pass to go to the nurse right before recess. The female principal had a talk with me and told me she was telling the parents of the child. Then I got fired. I emailed the vice superintendent and let him know I'm 18 and I've just graduated from the school district I work for. He said they weren't accusing me of anything, and after me explaining if they weren't accusing me of anything, they can't fire me. They gave me my job back. Have never and will never sub at that school again, and no other elementary schools at that. Edit. This was in Texas near Dallas. My district allows subs at 18 with a high school diploma, but it's a district-by-district decision. The principal of this school made it very clear to me that it was because I was a male teacher and the student was female. I'm in college now studying to become a graphic design/AV teacher in preferably high school. Before the incident, I worked all ages, K through 12th grade. After, I refused to work with elementary, and they prohibited me from working with the high school after finding out I had only just graduated. So I work mostly with 5th through 8th grade. Anytime I take my daughters to the park, it is painfully obvious that I am excluded or frowned at if I'm too close to their kids. It especially happens when mom groups are there together. It's not my fault that they're too busy sitting on the bench chatting to notice that their kids are now on top of the swing set and they didn't notice until I helped them down. You have no idea how it feels to be in a movie theater and have a mother get up and move her kids when you sit down, or to be walking to your car and have a woman look over her shoulder, pull out her keys and pepper spray, then start power walking towards her car in fear. So many other similar things like this occur as well. It's basically someone calling you a criminal just because you are going about your normal life. When Aphrodite lies around naked in a giant shell, she's a goddess. But when I do it, I'm drunk and no longer welcome at the aquarium. Old people have this opinion that all young people are rude, yet in reality are the most rude, selfish, and impatient people you will ever meet. I live in the UK. It's amazing how they think they're being perfectly reasonable, but they're actually being completely biased and outright hypocritical without even realizing it. Edit, I know the feeling for those of you who work in retail and have to deal with these types of people on a regular basis. I work on checkouts in a store that, quite appropriately, rhymes with Painsbury's, and I get the same abuse. I just want to say that even though people give you crap, it is absolutely not an easy job to do. So well done for always keeping your cool. It's hard sometimes, I know. Edit 2. I am in no way implying all old people are jerkwads, but there's definitely a large portion of them who seem to follow this bias where I'm from.
Ugh, you millennials are so self-centered. All you do is whinge. You have no regard for your elders. Shame on you. You're going to be working in retail all your life. Do you know how to do anything?
Susan, a 55-year-old who refuses to leave the store until her expired $1 off coupon is accepted. It's because at that point in life, you stopped giving a crap about what people think entirely. Some people take that and act like a jerkwad because they don't care if someone is affected. Some people go the other way and figure there's no point stressing about things that don't matter. My two grandmothers were the opposite ends of these spectrums. One would scream at the bus driver because the price of a ticket had gone up since she first moved here. 50 years ago, Nan. Let it go, love. And one would happily sit in a restaurant if her food took 40 minutes to come out because, quote, I haven't got anywhere to be anyway, and it's nice to be out. In my building, there's this old lady. We always said good morning to one another or smiled, so she obviously knew I lived here. To enter my building, you need a key. Once it was raining and windy outside, and my key was lost somewhere in my bag under a pile of books, papers, and God knows what else. So I was freezing, searching frantically through my bag for the key when I see her coming out. I think, great, she'll let me in. She went out of the building and closed the door behind her while pushing me out so I could not come in, all the time looking at me suspiciously. I can't let you in if you don't have the key, she said. A couple of days later, the same situation occurred, except it was me coming out and she was looking for her key. I seized the opportunity for revenge and did exactly the same thing, closing the door in front of her face and telling her I couldn't let her in without a key. She was still screaming obscenities at me while I walked away. WTF? You reap what you sow. If you won't respect me, I won't respect you. Which doesn't sound like a double standard, but when you consider what context it's used in, it changes. My father used to say this when I wouldn't do exactly as he commanded me to. The issue is that there are levels of respect. While it might sound like if you won't treat me with a certain amount of respect, I won't show the same amount back, but it is executed as, if you won't respect me as an authority, I won't respect you as a basic human. Letting them treat you with way less respect than you treated them while still being fair in their eyes. If a girl sleeps with tons of guys, she has a reputation, but if I do it, all of a sudden I'm gay? Went to school with a guy who was caught making out with a dude and filleting another dude. Claimed he wasn't gay. He has since come out as gay and no one cared because we knew it all along. Edit, the filleting and making out were two separate incidents. I'd have been more impressed if it was at the same time. Really annoys me when people complain about globalization but won't let go any of the benefits. People complain viciously about jobs being outsourced to Asia but will fight to the death for their right to buy a toaster for $4. This right here. My extended family cracks me up because they all work for big three automakers, and more power to them, but will complain about not, quote, buying American. Never mind the fact that automotive is a very global industry and the most, quote, American car pound for pound is actually a Toyota because of how Toyota sources its components. Women can wear a million different cuts of shirts, pants, skirts, or dresses and still be business casual. Men, all we get is long pants and long sleeve or short sleeve button-downs. Oh, and maybe a polo. Screw that. It's too freaking hot here 90% of the time. I at least want to wear shorts. Been there. Had a woman for a boss who said men may only wear dress shoes and pants and button-down shirts, and we had zero contact with customers. Women could wear what they wanted. One very hot summer day, all the ladies were wearing sundresses and sandals, so I asked why women had a different set of standards. Her only reply, men's feet stink. If skirts are in the dress code, wear one. I did it one freaking time. I was called into the boss's office before my shift even started. He asked why. I said it was hot, wearing this was cooler, and within the dress code. He said, "You've made your point. The dress code will be amended to allow for shorts." By the first break of the morning, the new dress code was on the wall of the break room, and I was, quote, the hero in the paisley print skirt. Malicious compliance has been a specialty of mine ever since then. When/if you are 35 plus, regardless of career success, if you don't have a family and children by then, as a man, you're typically just labeled as a bachelor still enjoying the single life. When you're a woman, it's like you're some depressing spinster who has forsaken their gender by not fulfilling their expected mom duties that are unfortunately ingrained in the woman identity the media has created. Screw that momopia. Edit. It's really fascinating that a lot of people immediately assume that these fictitious people both want kids, but, quote, lost the game, or, quote, timed out of their biological clock. The point I'm trying to make is that a child-free life shouldn't be considered a you lost or ran out of time situation at all. Reproducing shouldn't be expected, and it shouldn't affect one's self-image. This is probably my favorite post on this thread. As someone who's a member of the LGBTQ community, Happy Pride Month, by the way, the topic of having children hardly comes up within our circles. A lot of the time, we don't want them, and that's fine. There are plenty of people who do that for us anyway. For the people in the community who do want them, that's perfectly fine too. It should never affect the image of someone if they start a family or not. Being a teenager. Hey, you're almost an adult now. You must be responsible for yourself and do things on your own. What the heck? Do exactly what I tell you. Don't try to make decisions by yourself. Oh my god, that nerd is way too into that video game. Now excuse me, but I need to go spend a crap ton of time and money on Clash of Clans. I know that most people are thinking gender politics, but as a Christian, I'm most bothered when others believers rail against Sharia law and Muslim fundamentalism while trying to impose their own fundamentalist legal vision on others. Edit. I don't mean to equate extreme Islamic fundamentalism with American Christian fundamentalism. I could have drawn a more common example from my own life as a teacher. My pastor has been very open about how I should be able to share my faith with my public school students in a way that he would not tolerate from a Muslim teacher. That's the double standard at its heart, but in a less extreme form. He and many others want to preserve prayer in schools, Christmas, and the 10 Commandments, but they do not want likewise expression for other beliefs. Also, I've spent my day teaching about lynchings in U.S. history, so I'm not in the mood to pretend that Christian fundamentalism can't get as extreme as Sharia. It's not the point I'm arguing, but it's not an invalid point in modern history. Don't trust Muslims, they'll force Sharia law on you. Now vote for this nice man who wants to ban gay marriage and teach creationism in school. I've never been ashamed of being a Christian, but I've sure as heck been ashamed of being in the same religion as some of these people. Men don't cry. Every single instance that says men aren't supposed to show emotions, tears, or anything that could be considered a, quote, weakness ticks me off to no end. Bonus irritation points if that's considered a sign of homosexuality, as if that's a weakness. Sadness isn't exclusively feminine. Bottling up emotions is one of the most toxic things I've ever done, and I'm probably still doing it unconsciously due to my upbringing. I'm certain that most men are. And that's messed up. Female friend shares a post on Facebook with the title, "Hot male French farmers pose topless for calendar because why not?" The comments and amount of likes the post received baffled me. If I was to share a post of a load of female models, because why not, I would be ridiculed or called perverted. And I know that 10 to 20 of my male friends wouldn't be posting comments like, "Heart eyes emoji, January though." Girl, how tall are you? Me, 6'1". Why? Girl, oh, good, because I only date at least 6 feet tall guys. Me, how much do you weigh? Girl,
Not your business.
girl on matches. Probably my own. That's to say, noticing the hypocrisy in my beliefs and actions. If I can't call BS on myself, then I don't have much of a right to call it on others. Hopefully, I'm arcing toward improvement, but I have a lot of work to do. People complaining online about people using their phone while driving, by taking a photo of that person while they themselves are driving. I can do what offends you because it's freedom. You can't do what offends me because it's not politically correct. Ooh, the urge to attend a conservative Christian family dinner and call my grandma, grandpa, and my grandpa, grandma. Now we'll see how they really feel about pronouns. Oh, you know I'm not your grandpa, right? And I'm not your grandma. So you like being called what you prefer, huh? Most people give the older generations grief about using computers. In my experience, I've seen plenty of millennials who can use their phone but don't understand how to use basic office software. In my experience, nothing 15 minutes in the help of Google can't solve. Your coworkers are absolutely free to joke about how they're going to drink a glass of wine or a whole bottle by myself when they finally get home from work. If I mention I take a couple hits of weed from a vaporizer before going to bed, they'll think I'm an addict that can't make it through life without a crutch. Talking about the historic slave trade in/from Africa is encouraged. Talking about non-African slave trade, example, the Irish being sold to the Caribbean, I know is called indentured servitude, makes you a racist. My SO and I are of different ethnicities, but we agreed that it's pretty messed up. We can't figure out why people, black or white, have such an issue with this. People get really angry about it. I'm American, so maybe that has something to do with it? Can't we just agree slavery is a crappy thing to do all around, no matter what you call it? Women are allowed to wear men's clothes, and nobody cares too much. Being a tomboy is normal. Men aren't allowed to wear women's clothes in public. That's too weird for everyone else. Being against abortion, but giving absolutely no craps about the mother's health/financial situation and the child's health or well-being. We blatantly accept lies from our corrupt governments. When whistleblowers reveal information on said governments, they're traitors. Yeah, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. The reason why whistleblowers are given a complimentary deep tissue head massage from the CIA when they expose corruption is because those powers want to stay unopposed and will do whatever it takes to keep it that way. Late to the party, but my girlfriend and I have one that she finds funny and I just find irritating. Both of us train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's like wrestling with chokeholds and attempted limb snapping for the uninitiated. As with any combat sport, you get roughed up all the time, and anyone who trains a few times a week constantly has bruises. Bruises on the shins, arms, and wrists are especially common. If people see either of our bruises and feel the need to comment, the reaction is very different for me being a guy and her being a girl. To me, oh, did you get in a fight? To her, who's hurting you? There are hotlines you can call. This happened with me and my fiancé with different sports. I've been playing rugby since I was 14, and he plays hockey. You get banged up playing both those things. Once I took an elbow to the face and broke my nose. He took me to the ER, where they saw me with a broken nose and his black eye from a game a few days before, and separated us under the guise of, quote, needing to look at me alone. I got told repeatedly there were resources for me to leave if I needed to, financial or otherwise. Meanwhile, he got interrogated by a nurse in the waiting area over my nose and how it happened. Never mind the fact that we were both roughed up, and if we were fighting, he could have easily been the victim defending himself in this situation. They just saw a man who's older than me and registered it as him beating the crap out of me and me afraid to leave him.
What was your cringiest encounter with a nice guy? Met a nice guy over OKC a couple of years ago. I gave him my number after we chatted for a bit and talked about possibly meeting. When he suggested we meet at a local elementary school in the middle of the night, I noped the frick out and told him it was nice talking to him, but I didn't really want to meet anymore. He kept trying to convince me by saying he would buy me gifts. He really likes me and thinks we could hit it off. When I told him no, he blew up and called me the B word, a whore, the usual. He tells me that I now owe him $15 because he'd already bought me a present for our first date and that I needed to meet him right now to give him his money. Or I could meet with him and have a good time and forget about all of this. Blocked his number right away and didn't hear from him until the next day when he calls me from a different number. When I picked up, he acted pleasant and asked me what time we were going to meet today for our date. I told him to F off and blocked him again. Then I get a text a couple of hours later from another fricking phone number saying that if I don't meet him, he was going to take his own life. After a bit of unnecessarily dramatic conversation, I basically told him that I didn't care if he did that, he was psychotic and needed to leave me alone. I blocked him and forgot about it. Fast forward to about 6 months ago when I get a text from an unknown number. I knew exactly who it was when I read the text. I have $20 and a fun night planned for us. Want to meet sometime soon? Miss you. Blocked it, changed my number, never giving it out to a stranger again. There was a guy in high school who had a crush on me. He was never shy about it, and from day one he made me really uncomfortable. He had asked me out multiple times a day, always in front of my friends, who didn't help because they'd always egg me on to go out with him. I was the new kid in school and they'd all been friends with him since elementary. When I kept saying no, he assumed it was because I was seeing someone else, so he started telling people that I was sleeping with random guys at school. I wasn't. I had no interest in dating any of the boys I went to school with. Anytime I tried to tell him to stop doing that, he, and anyone else around for that matter, said he was just joking and needed to lighten up. It all came to a head at the homecoming dance my junior year. He was a senior, so it was his last homecoming. Apparently, the day before homecoming, he told one of my friends that he'd asked me out to the dance and I'd said yes. He had not asked me, I never had any intention of going to the dance. He kept going on to my friend about how special he wanted it to be, that he spent all of his money on tickets, gas, new shoes, and a corsage. My friend was so excited for him that she went over to his house the day of homecoming and helped him get everything ready. She also told all of our friends what was going on, so everyone was under the impression I was going to the dance with him. Let me also add, no one checked with me that I was going to the dance, so this was all going on without my knowledge. He told everyone that I was going to get dropped off by my parents, so he and all of my friends waited outside for me. They waited for 3 hours. Apparently, anytime my friends told him to come inside and that I wasn't coming, he'd start tearing up and say, "Just 5 more minutes." So of course, I went to show up to school on Monday and everyone was furious at me. None of my friends wanted to talk to me. I sat alone at lunch for 3 days completely confused about what was going on before some girl I'd never talked to before asked me why I'd stood him up. So I went up to the guy when he was alone, asked what the frick he had done, and he just started laughing hysterically and said, "If you agree to go out with me, I'll tell everyone it was just a misunderstanding." Never talked to the guy again. It permanently damaged my friendships with several people because they thought I was a massive piece of crap to this guy who they thought was really sweet. Holy God, what a manipulative moron. There's just so much premeditated destruction of the girl's social life on display that he deserves whatever badness life throws his way. I had to get a ride from a friend my junior year of high school. For some reason, I didn't have my car. I don't remember all the details. He stopped about a mile from my house and pulled over into the side of the road. He had told me he had had a dream where we had made out and that I was a really good kisser in it, and he decided I could either walk home from there or kiss him. Holy crap, do I have a story for this. So I'm a big dude, and at my first semester at university, I came in as a junior. And there was this guy that was just way too freaking into me, and he was super creepy about it. The dude would just sit uncomfortably close to me, like if I was sitting on a chair, he'd sit on the armrest, or if I was talking to someone, he'd place himself directly between me and the person I was talking to. It was annoying. He would always bring up discussions to make sure everyone in the room knew he was bi, and ask everyone their orientation, and every dude would answer straight and he'd awkwardly flirt with me or some other dude. After months of this, we were playing ping pong and we were getting in a stupid argument where he was just flat out wrong. It had something to do with game engines and pixel art. It was stupid. He would hate to admit he was wrong, but he decided that this was a good point to show me he was able to accept defeat in an argument. He goes, "Fred, I have Asperger's. It's really hard for me to look someone in the eye. I can only do it if I'm really mad at the person or if I really want to screw them. But don't worry, I'm not mad at you." All while staring right into my face. I just put my stuff down and walked away. I was like 19 and working my third shift at a gas station, casually sweeping the floor. The door opens and I hear that ding, so I look up and make eye contact with some guy. I can't explain what was going on in the guy's head, but it was like he thought it was some kind of slow-mo movie situation and he staggered back, gasping, and widening his eyes and staring at me. I'm not the kind of person to notice this kind of stuff in other people. I felt like I was reading a scene from Twilight in my head. I went behind the checkout counter, he grabbed his Red Bull or whatever, he kept obviously looking at me in shock and shaking his head like he was trying to psych himself up for something. Ladies, you know that feeling when you know someone wants to catch your attention and talk to you, but you're trying to keep it casual? This went on for like 20 minutes and I couldn't accomplish anything because I'm waiting for this dude to check out. Anyway, so he walks up to the checkout super dramatically, I check him out, he stares the whole time and finally says, "I never expected to see such a beautiful woman at a gas station. This is fate, you shouldn't be working here. I just can't help myself, I have to ask you to go out with me." I said, "Sorry, I have a boyfriend." He seriously looked enraged. He clenched his fists and gave me this overly dramatic, scary look, grabbed his stuff and stormed out the door. He moved his car so the bright headlights were facing the front of the store and sat there until the next customer came, probably an hour later. Honestly, I wasn't too scared, it was just really like, what? I just wanted to finish my list of duties at this crappy gas station and live my life. But some Joe concocted a bizarre dream scenario in his head and somehow that was my fault. Gotta love the sheer stupidity of thinking both that you're way too pretty to be there, but then being shocked and enraged that you could possibly have a boyfriend. What a nutcase. A guy sat down next to me at a coffee shop and asked why I didn't have a boyfriend. That was his opening line, so I told him I did, and he immediately looked appalled, demanding to know where he was, and I was like, "Bro, do I need to wear a sign or something?" Nice guy said he was doing me a favor by trying to stick his hands down my pants because he was the only one that would give me experience, being the size that I was. Joke's on him, I lost 65 pounds after that and turned my life around completely. Had a very difficult, traumatic end to a long-term live-in engagement. He went to jail, I decided to go to Europe to backpack for the summer. Best friend, male, agreed to come along and was very aware that this was a post-breakup getaway, to clear my head and have fun. He flew out ahead of me to visit family. I arrived at the airport to see him waiting for me in Europe on bended knee, ring, flowers and all. I was furious and that friendship was destroyed. Vacation was equal parts horrendously awkward and tense and amazing, but ended with him drunkenly ranting about it all in a hostel one night, ultimately becoming inappropriate and then physically aggressive toward me, and a group of strange hostel bunkies helping to quietly pack my stuff while he was finally passed out and get me to the airport and home immediately. I haven't seen him since, about 8 years now. I guess in his mind it was the perfect cliché movie moment to begin our lives together. He had 10 years to speak up, but felt that the very first moment I step on European soil to begin my newfound freedom and let go of it all was the absolute best moment to inform me that he had lied essentially about our platonic friendship for a decade and wanted an immediate transition to being lifelong partners, right then and there. My stomach is churning even now thinking about it, and of course people gathered around and cheered. I believe that's what it was that infuriated me the most. It's humiliating to be put on the spot like that in front of so many strangers, expecting and hoping to witness a fairy tale moment. I had to loudly say something like, "Come on, stand up, you're joking right, brother friend. Quit playing around, let's go celebrate my 7-year-long relationship ending last week, and go party my freedom now. Ha 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 ha." Of course, I'm the bad girl in that situation, and he's just cliché hopelessly in love best friend, good guy, finishing last as always. Someone even booed me. Met a guy at a gathering at a mutual friend's place and ended up getting stuck talking to him all night. Night ends and I don't give it another thought. Couple of weeks later, he calls my house. I didn't give him my last name or my phone number. Since he now has my number, he also knows my address and starts showing up at my house at weird times, sometimes with his equally creepy sister. Fast forward a few years and I haven't lived at home for at least a year. He shows up, Dad answers the door and just tells him I'm not in, not that I don't live there or anything. Later that same night, Dad lets the dog out for a pee before bed. Dog disappears into the backyard, chasing something he really wants to catch. Thinks it's a skunk or something until he hears the gate on the neighbor's fence open and close quickly. Dog has chased a person out of the backyard. My old bedroom window faced our backyard. We don't know for sure, but I think my dog chased that frickin' creep out of our yard. Screw you, Adam. I don't think we have a catch-all name for these so-called nice guys of the world in the same way that we have Chad for D-bags and bold players. But yeah, for the purpose of addressing all the nice guys in this collection, screw all of you, Adams. Drinking too much on the first date in order to stay over at my apartment and sleep on my couch, and then try to worm into my bed at 3 a.m. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I knew this kid in 9th grade who seemed like a nice enough dude. Let's call him Frank. We became friends over our mutual love of video games, with him seeming to be a lot more invested in the friendship, but like I said, he seemed harmless. One day, I invite him over to the house to play games on my PlayStation. We have a good enough time, him continuously talking about how he's so happy to have a friend who likes video games and is a girl. Red flag, I know. I got to school the next day, and during class, my friends tell me that Frank went and bragged to anyone that would hear that I invited him over and that he heard I was super easy and bought a condom. Just in case. Being an angry and petty teenager, I walk up to him during lunch period in front of a bunch of guys and called him out for what he said. He began stuttering, but before he could finish, I told him he was a creep and to never talk to me again. Cut to a few months later, and I'm called into the vice principal's office. I get there and she asked me if I was friends with Frank, and I responded that we used to be. She asked what ended our friendship, and I explained the situation to her. She looks at me and says, "That's not what he told us, but I think I know who's telling the truth." Turns out that after I ended the friendship, Frank fixated on another girl only to discover that she had a boyfriend. Frank decided the best course of action was to get rid of the boyfriend by pulling a knife on the kid in the hallway and threatening him. Security, of course, gets him and discovers that he only had a butter knife. Still, he threatened someone, so he was called into the principal's office. Whereupon, he explained that the only reason he pulled the knife on this guy was because he was so heartbroken after I dumped him following our 6-month anniversary, and fell in love with this other girl because she treated him right. He got suspended, but since it was close to the end of the school year, he just never came back and transferred schools the following school year. Good riddance. I considered him a friend. Stayed at his apartment when visiting his town. He slept in the living room, I in the bedroom. When it got late, he started making jokes about how he had hidden the bedroom key and that I should get ready for him. I spent the night half awake and fully dressed from sheer fear. In the morning, I packed and wanted to leave, but he wouldn't let me go without having a goodbye kiss. He physically blocked the door so I couldn't get out. I tried to play it off and somehow managed to squeeze by him without getting kissed, but it was a terrifying experience. And that was the end of our friendship. I've got a weird one. A good buddy of mine was moving across the country. I'd known him for a while and he was very gay. And I'm not, but we were still pretty close friends. He had his going-away party at a very gay bar here in Austin. No big, I'm comfortable with my heterosexuality. I'll go and have a few drinks and dance a little and go home with my girlfriend, who went to the party with me. Well, we get there and about 20 minutes in, she gets a text that her friend's sister has been in a bad car accident. She leaves to go help her friend. I decide I'll stay for another hour or so before heading home. I'm at the bar having a drink and I start to feel tired, so I'm going to go outside and call an Uber. As I'm outside, one guy from the party group, but who I didn't know at all, asked what was going on, and I told him I was leaving. He was like, "Dude, I live right by you, I'll drop you off." I didn't think about it at the time, but he would have no clue where I lived because we had barely been introduced at the party. I get in his car and as we turn the corner he puts his hand on my leg. I kinda snap out of it and say, "You know what, man? I'm uncomfortable here, why don't you let me out of the car?" I get the whole, "Nah bro, I'll get you home safe, it's fine. I won't stop." Doesn't pull over, comes up to a stoplight, I try to force open the door and the door won't open. He won't look at me and by this point I'm saying very forcibly to let me go. I normally conceal carry, but not this night since I was in a bar, and I was drinking. Both illegal to carry a gun while doing so. After a few more lights and silence where I realize that he's taking me somewhere against my will, I realize that I have a window breaker on my keychain. It's one of those combo thingies that can cut a seatbelt and break a window if your car is underwater. So I pull it and immediately break the passenger side window at the next light and start crawling out. Luckily, there were like 8 people that saw it happen and came running over. He still wouldn't unlock the door. When he saw them running over to help, he opened the door and pushed me out and sped off. He was in a stolen car and no one knew him at the party. He had just started associating with our group early on and I thought he was part of the party. It was scary as heck. I worked for a few years at a children's museum. There was this single dad with 3 daughters who was cute but way too old for me, especially at the time when I was 19 and he was about 35. I also got a weird vibe from him, but he was always very nice, if a little uncomfortable. His daughters were adorable. The following events happened over a 6-month period. One day, some guest approaches me and asks if I've seen this missed connections on Craigslist about the museum. It was about me. The guy was writing about things we'd talked about and was saying how good we would be together, etc. Thinking back, I honestly think that she must have been friends with the guy, because it was too weird that she approached me out of all the other workers and then asked me what I thought about the guy who wrote the ad. Later, he found me on Facebook and tried to add me. I didn't add him, and the next time he was in the museum, he followed me room to room and just glared at me from afar, not talking to me. Super uncomfortable. I thought it would be easier to just add him, so I did. Then he starts commenting really weird and creepy stuff on my photos, like a gif of Pikachu biting his lip or just fap 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 fap. So I decided enough is enough and deleted him. Then he tries to win me back or something. He brings a wrapped canvas to the museum and gives it to my boss, saying it would be too weird to just give it to me. And my boss calls me down later and makes me open it in front of everyone. It was a very fun workplace and we loved to rip on each other. And it was a painting of one of my photos on Facebook. I was so mortified I put it away, but one of my co-workers, and also my best friend, replaced the clock in the bathroom with my portrait because she's a dick. While it was funny, I also asked my boss to watch out for him, so from then on I didn't see him anymore and blocked him on Facebook. So I think I'm safe. My nice guy said he'd take his own life unless I became his girlfriend. Nice guy from college, we're talking about trench coat and fedora, fingerless gloves, pathetically sleazy smile, the whole shebang, in a tropical country at that, who kept trying to talk to me even as I was clearly trying to do my homework. Now, I was okay with multitasking, I could really do homework and listen and respond to him, but he wouldn't have it. Hey, you know what? I really hate it when women, yes, not people, women, specifically, ignore me. I was dumbfounded but also really offended, so I shot back that I was listening to him even if I wasn't looking at him. No, but when I'm talking to someone, I want them to look at me. Friend overhears this and went off on him faster than I did. He left me alone after that. Not as terrible as the other answers here, but that was my first real taste of it. As usual with the darker and more negative subjects that we post here sometimes, I find myself grasping for literally anything to be positive about. So well done to your friend for giving Creepo McFedora a piece of their mind. Stick by those friends. A co-worker gave me a ride to the train station because I'd missed my bus when I was a trainee. It's a 10 to 15 minute ride and I thought it was nice of him, but I didn't think much of it. I thought he was just helping out. When we were still in the car, he then mentioned wanting to invite me for a drink one day, then offered to drive me all the way back home. He was living near the train station we were heading to, and it would have made a 45-minute drive to get to my place. I declined because I felt uncomfortable, and because without traffic, the train was actually more convenient for me. He mistaked my refusal for politeness or just outright ignored it and insisted, saying it wasn't bothering him to drive all the way here. At this point, I didn't care about him. I was just starting to get scared. He insisted, and I had to argue and practically begged him to just drop me at the train station, finally mentioning that my dad was waiting for me anyway at the terminus, and pretended we could have a drink someday, and he let it go. But it all happened as we were driving onto the highway, so I felt trapped and it was really uncomfortable. Thankfully, it was my last week here, and I avoided him the last few days that I worked. He let me sleep over because I lived an hour away and we'd been drinking, and he pulls the old, "You're really lucky I'm a nice guy. Most guys would force themselves on you right now, but I don't because I'm nice. You're really lucky," despite us having been normal platonic friends for a few months before this, and me having established a few times that I wasn't interested in anything else with him. I was on a Discord server and spoke in a voice chat frequently. One time this dude came in and didn't speak, only in text chat. He kept putting himself down for attention, so I told him that he shouldn't worry, blah blah blah, just to be polite and to try to get him to stop. This went on for quite a bit, and I think he might have taken that politeness as something more. I'd already told most people on the server that I don't swing that way, and he got all down about it and literally complained to everyone on the server that he had a crush on her, but she hates me. Fast forward an hour or so, and he PMs me saying that it's actually me he likes. I told him that I didn't like him back and that I was gay, but he threatened to take his own life, so I told him to stop being so manipulative and to pull himself together. I was at a bar and coffee shop drinking tea when this guy, a friend of a friend, came and sat down next to me with 2 shots of whiskey. I told him no thank you, I'm not drinking, and he said, "Wow, you're really making me angry. I'm being fricking nice to you and you're being really fricking rude." I said no thank you again. He kept going off about how rude I was and what a nice guy he was. Finally, I told him that I'd take the shot and throw it in his eyes if he didn't walk away. He walked away finally. Prick. Nice guy asks me out in high school on the bus and I declined. He gives me the silent treatment after that. The next day he appears in my friend group with his arms encasing one of my friends who looked clearly uncomfortable. He tells her he loves her and how great of a woman she is to be giving him a chance to treat her like a princess. I talked to her after, and he had asked her over and over to date him until she said yes. She was a very nice girl, and I felt bad for her. I told her what happened, and that seemed to give her the confidence to stop the dating after only a few hours. We never saw him much after that, thank goodness.
Late night store clerks. What are the strangest things that have happened on the job? I work nights at a gas station in a pretty good neighborhood in New Hampshire, so usually it's pretty boring. One night, I did have a customer really creep me out. I was just getting ready to close down the store when a little old man came in. He was small and dressed in khakis and a button-down shirt. I made the usual small talk of asking him how his day was going. Then, as I was handing him his change, he firmly grabbed my wrist, made direct eye contact with me, and said, "Hell is a real place, and the devil has already got his hand on you, girl. Be careful." I worked third shift at a Sheetz. For those of you who don't know, it's a gas station / convenience store / fast food place. On multiple occasions, I have been cussed out because we discontinued pickle chips. I've had people tell me to screw off, break things, demand to call corporate, etc. Drunk people love pickle chips. Edit, I get it, sober people love pickle chips too. I've never been a store clerk, but I was lucky enough to witness the following story. 7-Eleven, circa 1996. A guy walks up to the surly clerk, who seemed to work 25 hours a day, and asks, "Do you sell eggs by the half dozen?" Clerk, "No, you have to buy a dozen." Guy, "I only need 6. Clerk, "I don't care. You get 12 or you get 0. Without saying another word, the guy walks back to get his dozen eggs, pays, and walks out. Then he throws his 6 unwanted eggs at the store window before driving off. I worked 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift in an all-night garage for a few months when I was 18. There was this weird Vietnamese dude who always drove a white Honda Prelude and always filled up with 666 pounds of petrol. He wore the same pair of cutoffs every time, with blotches and bruises all over his legs, and used to literally wander in, leaning against the displays, pick up as many yogurts as he could carry, pay with the 50-pound note, and stagger out. One time he came in with these 2, obviously prostitute women, who were draped all over him with the biggest pupils I have ever seen. They stood at the counter while I scanned all their yogurts, and he spoke for the first and only time. Staring at me, said to the women, "She can join us, can't she?" One of the women looked at me and said, "You'll make a lot more money if you come with us, darling." I nervously laughed, took their cash, and they left, grinning in silence. The place I worked had a monitor / camera that showed you on it as you walked it. It was like 10 minutes before closing, and a guy walks in and just starts rapping into the camera and acting like he's shooting a music video. He went through an entire song. A man came in 10 times within a single hour. He kept leaving and coming back without buying a single thing. Finally, on the 10th time, he comes up to the counter with a box of tampons. I proceed to ask him, "Rough night?" To which he responded, "I really don't want to talk about it." Had a guy pull up to the pump, unhooked it wanting post-pay. Our policy said not to authorize it between midnight and 5 a.m., which was prepay only. I announced this to the dude over the loudspeaker. I'm pretty sure he was wasted. He continued to get more and more belligerent. When he started beating the pumps with the nozzle / hose, I called the cops. Dude starts banging on the door. Locked, no way he could get in. Can't, gets frustrated, and finally just whips his deal out and starts wagging it in the general direction of the store. The CCTV is getting all this, so I just start laughing my butt off. Then, the cops pull up, and 2 deputies put this poor, drunk, deal-wagging man away in the back of a police car. I quit a few months after that. I worked at a small convenience store in the early 1990s. They had one of those fry delis that had chicken, JoJo's, corn dogs, burritos, etc. This particular night, I had run out of burritos and chicken. I also shut the thing down and cleaned it all out about an hour before closing. About 5 minutes before I was closing up, a guy walked in and asked for some burritos. I told him I was out of them, and that I was just about to close and the fryer was shut down. He walked around the store for a minute. I assumed he was looking for something else to buy, and then he came up to the counter, pulled out a knife, and told me if I didn't cook him some burritos, he was going to stab me. I freaked out, but told him I had none to cook. I showed him the freezer and told him I would happily cook anything he wanted from it, but he will see I was out of burritos. He looked at it for about a minute, turned to me, and said, "You really are out." I replied, "Yeah." He then put the knife away and left the store. Edits. Just to clarify, a JoJo is basically a deep-fried potato wedge. They were very popular where I grew up. I guess there are other names for them in other parts of the country, but where I grew up, we called them JoJos, and you ordered them by weight. For example, you would say, "Give me a half pound of JoJo's." Also, as far as I know, the guy never got caught. I called the police and described the guy, but never heard from them again, so I assume he got away. The burrito bandito could still be roaming the streets. And thanks for the gold, kind burrito-loving soul. It's official. My highest rated comment ever is about nearly being stabbed over a burrito. A guy came in to buy beer after hours. Told him I couldn't sell. It was against the law. He pulled out a badge, said, "I am the law." I called 911 and a cop shows up. Tells me if I can just let it go, I wouldn't have any more problems. I let it go. 2 weeks later, driving home late at night, way over the speed limit, I got pulled over. It was cop number 2. He came up to the car, recognized me, said, "Slow down," and left. I used to work the graveyard at a gas station near my place. A pretty normal night. Clean, stock smokes, clean again, sit behind the counter. A woman came in about mid-30s with a little boy with her. She was in tears and her clothes were torn a bit. She came up and asked to use the phone. When she got off without getting an answer, she asked to stay here for a bit. I told her it would be no problem. About 20 minutes go by, and I wound up giving her and her kid free drinks and one of the sandwiches we have on the hot rack. She was in the store for about 30 minutes until her, quote, boyfriend came in and found her and her kid. He was pretty calm at first, but then started screaming at her and telling her she needs to come with him. Luckily, before anything crazy happened, a cruiser pulled up to the front and 2 cops came in and intervened. He was arrested right there. I guess he had been beating her in front of her kid and she was trying to run away. I'm glad I got to keep her away from harm for at least a little bit. It was a scary night. Let's see. Closed the store to play hockey on the roof. Had a guy come in and, quote, inspect individual eggs in each carton until he found the perfect egg. Had an old guy who asked to use our bathroom, but first he needed reading material and asked for an adult mag from behind the counter. But when we gave it to him, he said he didn't like that one and asked for a different one. Then he died while taking a crap. You know, normal stuff like that. I actually used to work retail for a couple months. Craziest interaction I ever had was a guy who came up to me and started striking up conversation, but what he said really stuck out to me. He said, "You should subscribe to Am I the Genius and Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below." I just kinda nodded and thanked him for watching. Some people. Huge guy comes in and asks to use the restroom. No big deal. I'm not one to stand in the way of nature. Well, maybe 20 minutes later, guy comes out in a huff and says, "Dude, I'm really sorry. I screwed up your toilet. It's all good, man. I'll get it." Not really needing spectators while I cleaned crap, I expect the guy to shrug his shoulders and walk off. Well, he looks back into the back where the restroom is with a look of disgusting concern and says, "Man, it's really coming out. Like, it's coming out into the back room." I rush back, thinking I've got to at least stop this from becoming some kind of biohazard event. I round the corner and there's nothing, but I can smell an unholy, overwhelming stench. I continue back, expecting to ruin my shoes at any moment until I reach the men's room. At this point, I've had to cover my face with my shirt and focus on breathing through my mouth, but I reach the door with no issue. Frustrated from the mind-numbing odor alone, I push the men's room door open, ready for at least an inch of gas station dukes all over the floor. As the door swings forward, I see nothing but water filling my eyes and the black/brown human paint the fat jerk left against the back of the bowl. Ticked to the point of rushing out, fully intending on asking this rotten jerk what the deal was, I round the corner again to see his big, poop-eating grin spread across his face. Stinks, huh? TLDR, got jigsawed in the breathing in noxious fumes. I worked at a 24/7 gas station in a small college town. One night, the club across the street had a fight break out and about 50 people were pepper sprayed by the police when they responded at about 1:30 a.m. 5 minutes later, cue 50 angry clubgoers bursting into the store, running to the dairy cooler, dousing themselves in milk, and then running back out. I just stood there in utter confusion and then told my boss I didn't want the late shift anymore. Edit, man, I really missed out on an amusing pun with utter confusion, huh? Not a late night clerk, as my store closes at 9, but some pretty strange things have happened. In no particular order, a woman tried to tell me that Jesus could talk to her through her eyes and that we were all going to hell. A man came in for no reason other than to take a dump in aisle 3. Some guy tried to come in and steal cigarettes from behind our counter and may have gotten away with it if he had not then tried to buy cigarettes with the other ones stuffed down his shirt. 2 different people have tried to lock themselves in our bathroom and tell us that that was their home now. Once a week, someone will try to buy our entire cereal aisle, just pulling entire displays off the shelf and trying to do it as quickly as possible, like getting into a line is some sort of free pass and we have to let them buy the stuff. An ex-employee one time came back in after hours as we were closing down stuff for the night and started to work. She was behind the deli counter just cutting meat, talking to invisible customers. We later found out she was high on pills. A guy got locked in our bathroom freezer after hours. We only knew he was there because he escaped and broke a window that set off our alarms. That was the first time we replaced the giant display windows. The second time was right after we had just shut down for the night. Kids on bikes threw rocks through our windows. The sound was terrifying. Even though we had them on camera, the store never pressed charges. Story time. In high school, I worked at a little mom-and-pop department store. We sold odds and ends at super high prices, and they eventually went out of business when I was a couple of years into college. Anyway, one night I was working a closing shift, and that involved shutting down the registers, turning off all the lights, etc. We had just stocked these baby doll toys on the shelf that day, those motion-sensing ones that giggled and cooed when you got close to them. Well, the lights turning off must have triggered them, because after the first chunk goes out, we hear coos. Second chunk goes out, giggles. Third chunk goes out, and we hear, "Islam is the light!" Needless to say, we whipped those suckers back to the manufacturer. They didn't know about the propaganda babies because they only said that phrase randomly, so it must have gotten past whatever testing process they had. Very freaky to hear in a dark store at night. I watched a truck pull up to one of our pumps. Guy gets out to pump gas. A Durango comes hauling it from the back of the building. Another guy gets out with a gun aimed at the first guy. I was on the phone with a friend of mine and said, "Someone just pulled a gun at the pump. I'm gonna have to let you go." I called the cops. Turned out the guy pumping gas had robbed a store 3 towns over, and the Durango was an undercover cop who had been in pursuit. Another time, a guy came in, walked to the back cooler, got a can of Sprite, and came to the register to check out. As I'm ringing him up, one of our local cops walks in, gun drawn, says, "Put your hands on the counter, put your hands on the counter now." Well, I put my hands on the counter along with the customer because all I'm thinking is, I have no idea what I've done, but I'm very sorry for it. Turned out that guy had been involved with the robbery of a convenience store in the next town, 5 minutes away, and had fled in a Mustang with 2 other individuals. They wrecked the car trying to evade the cops. All 3 dispersed, 2 were apprehended pretty quickly, but the third came into the store to either blend in or rob me. I honestly don't know which. After the festivities and them hauling the guy away, the cop told me he had almost lost it when I put my hands on the counter too, and that I should really rethink working closing shifts at my age. I was 19 at the time, and I am female. I laughed and I was like, "Give up free entertainment?" Edit. First story to clarify, the undercover cop jumped out of the Durango with the gun pointed at the suspect. Graveyard shift at a gas station. Full serve gets shut down after 11 p.m. because there's only one clerk on site. Traffic cones block the full serve pumps, signs inform the customer. Around midnight, a van pulls up with California plates and peace love signs in the windows. Woman gets out, moves the traffic cones, and pulls up to full serve. I use the intercom to tell her that she will have to use self-serve if she wants gas. No answer. I go to the door and try to wave her over or call out to her. Can't see any sign of her. I shrug and go back inside. I'm not allowed to leave the store unattended, so there's not much I can do. 10 minutes later, a woman gets out of the van and comes in. "I've been waiting for service for over an hour," she says. I decide not to argue about the time elapsed and just say, "I'm very sorry, ma'am, but we don't offer full serve after 11. Perhaps you noticed the traffic cones and signs to that effect? You expect to pump my own gas?" she says. Again, I'm sorry. I'd be happy to help you, but I can't leave the store unattended. I appreciate your understanding. She snorts and digs a 20 out of her purse and tosses it on the counter. She goes out, moves the van to self-serve, pumps the gas. Then she comes back. "May I use your restroom, please?" she asks. "Absolutely. Right back there," I say, relieved. She goes to the restroom, and she's in there for about 15 minutes. I start to worry. Finally, she comes out and comes to the counter. "I know all about you," she says. You're the one who brought the Black Plague. You brought it all the time forever. It was always you. You caused all those deaths, all that suffering. Did you like hearing the babies wail and scream? I bet you loved it. All the demons love it. That's you. You're a demon. You are evil. I can tell. And I'll tell you something else. You skunk me up, I'll skunk you back. I stared at her, retreating back, speechless. She got in her van and drove away. Skunk her up? Because I didn't pump her gas? Weird. I went back to fronting shelves for about 30 seconds before I thought, perhaps I should check the bathroom. I walked back and pushed open the door. Poop. Poop everywhere. On the walls, the floor, the mirror, the sink, all over the toilet lid and the tank, crap on the door, clearly smeared by hand. And oh, the stench. As I turned to get the cleaning supplies, I muttered under my breath, "You skunked me back, all right. Yes, you did." I worked through my college years at a grocery store in a college town. I worked in the deli/bakery and daytime cashier. One night, I was asked to work the late shift for time and a half. I didn't have class the next day, so heck yeah. It was a night I'll never forget. As I was transitioning from day to late night shift around 9 p.m., a kid came in and started just eating olives off the deli bar with his bare hands. Cops get called. He is found 5 minutes later assaulting the soda machine outside, screaming and crying at the same time. Then arrested while high on what was probably PCP or meth. A plethora of drunk sorority and frat jerks pouring in between midnight and 3 a.m. trying to buy alcohol when they were already wasted. The town had a bus system that ran all over the place for free, and we were a very central stop. Had to call a, quote, code wood to summon our late-night stalker who was indeed built like a tree trunk. Some punks wanted to steal some fillies and demanded to, quote, just hold on to them while they shopped, then got confrontational when I wouldn't give the fillies to them before paying. For clarification, since I'm a terrible writer, Wood was a night stockman who probably went to bodybuilding competitions on the weekends. Hence, I was calling him to the front to help me deal with the hooligans until the police could show up. After the cops showed up with their canine from said confrontation, she decided to hang out and talk to me for a while. She showed me a bunch of fake IDs she collected. Insomniac Kid kept coming into the store to buy food and smokes. The street sweeper guys showed up around 5 a.m. to clean the lot. They had to come inside to use the restroom. In that amount of time, their street sweeper got stolen because they left the keys in and running. Not sure if they ever got it back, but I imagine it will be hard to hide in a small college town. TLDR, what was a highly functional, prestigious college town got rather seedy at night. I also spent a lot of time reading, but I don't suppose people came here to read about my Asimov novel. Edit, Phillies are a cigarillo/blunt used to smoke weed, usually in a party scenario. They are commonly shoplifted after normal business hours. Thus, they are kept behind the counter so they are not easily accessed. Back from my days working graveyard shift at a grocery store. Let's see what I can remember. Had a former employee come in drunk one night and call the cops on himself for shoplifting because he wanted somewhere to sleep that night. Had an employee come in on a night off all ticked off, proceeds to walk straight to the back room without a word. About 10 minutes later, there was a successive loud pop, 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 pop. Turns out he climbed up to the roof to fire his gun. A customer came up and told me he heard something fall down in the back room. Tons of stoners buying ice cream at 2 a.m. Meth heads buying Brillo pads and ammonia after 3 a.m. Bars closed at 2 a.m., so all the cops were usually gone from the area by around 3. Saw a drunk guy fall asleep while his car idled along in the parking lot. Luckily, he hit a curb and no damage was done, but the cops got a good laugh out of that one. A tall, drunk Russian guy tries to buy beer after the 2 a.m. legal cutoff time, then proceeds to pick on a sober customer half his size. The little guy took one swing and broke the Russian dude's nose. Had a guy come in when another employee was taking a dump. I'm so sorry that there's so much poop in this episode, I have no idea why. Guy really had to take a dump, so we turned around and took a dump at the urinal, asking the employee on the toilet for toilet paper. In high school, I worked at a 24-hour pharmacy which also had a small selection of beer. At about 2 a.m., this guy walks in 3 sheets to the wind, saunters over to the beer, and grabs 2 12-packs. He comes up to the counter and slams the beer down, reaches into his pocket, and pulls out a half-eaten taco and puts it on the counter. I couldn't say anything because I was so perplexed. I just let him walk out with the beer and told my bosses I thought he might have a gun also. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. A couple weeks later, he apparently tried this at the family-owned gas station across the street and got shot. I worked at Dunkin' Donuts. Every Tuesday night at about 8:45, a guy would come in. A guy in Daisy Dukes and a sequined bikini top. He was balding, had a beer gut, and chest hair. He would strut his stuff to the counter and order 2 sprinkled donuts. every Tuesday. Honestly, I aspire to that level of confidence. Used to work third shift overnight in a Texaco 20 years ago. One night, this guy in a bright yellow Mustang comes in to buy gas and beer. I run his credit card, and the register flags it for being stolen. So I tell the guy, your car won't work. Says I have to keep it. So the guy kind of freaks out, leaves his beer, then hops in his car and speeds off. I call the cops because he already pumped his gas and left without paying for it. So later, I walk home at 6 a.m. I lived only a 5-minute walk away. As I'm walking, I see the yellow Mustang parked at an apartment complex across from the street from my house. So I go back to work and call the cops again, explaining that I know where the guy lives. Presumably, after that they found him and arrested him or whatever. A few days later, I had to do a friend a favor and take her to visit her boyfriend, who was in jail at the time. On our way out of the jail, some guy walks up to her to bum a cigarette off of her. It was the guy with the yellow Mustang. I sped up to walk ahead of them, so hopefully he wouldn't recognize my face. She gives him a cigarette, and he proceeds to complain about how he got arrested because he found a credit card, so of course he was going to buy some gas and beer with it. He didn't recognize me, so I remain unmurdered.
What Valentine's Day disasters have you witnessed? I served at a Japanese hibachi restaurant and once had a couple come and the dude dumps her after the meal. She then gets up and throws up a trail probably a good 20 feet as she runs to the bathroom. The dude got up and left the girl, and I was left to clean the mess. I blew my car's tire and my friend came in to bail me out. We're both straight dudes and forgot it was Valentine's. Decided to have dinner, and both were coming from important meetings, so had suits on. We didn't catch on until the end on how the entire waitstaff thought we were just the cutest gay couple. I 100% went to lunch with my best friend on V-Day years ago because we were both single and the staff thought we were dating. This is hilarious. There was a note in our reservations that it was an engagement. They wanted champagne, a specific seat, a bunch of other stuff. The server comes up to the table with something like, "So I read we're celebrating an engagement. Congratulations." Confusion from the woman, glaring from the guy. He hadn't proposed yet. The server had ruined it. These two were on a date and the guy went to go use the bathroom. The girl just up and leaves after he went to the restroom. When the guy came back, he sat around for a while until asking his waitress where she went. She replied with saying she left. The guy then asked the waitress if she would go on a date with him. The waitress said no. 0 for 2 in one night. Damn. In my adult club bouncer days, we had one of our regulars get suited up and bring flowers in one V-Day to try and woo one of the exotic dancers. It didn't work. Pro tip, if every time you all hang out involves you giving her money, she's not into you. He proposed, she said no. He cried and tried to change her mind for 20 minutes while she sat there stony-faced. She finally got up and walked out. He paid and left in tears. I waited at a Section 1 V-Day that had a marriage proposal, a 40th anniversary, and a breakup all at the same time. The breakup was the worst. The guy brought his high-class date a gift, a mini ceramic bear holding balloons. He presented it when I was at the table and she looked at it like it was a hot turd. I just knew this was not going to end well. She left at the end of the meal and must have said something because he stayed at the table for another 40 minutes, head down and crying. I felt bad. He saw the celebrations going on at the other tables. Sweet God, the 2 worst days of the year I've had to work as a waiter were Mother's Day and Valentine's Day. Both were difficult enough without a distraught, crying, newly single blocking off one of your tables on the busiest day of the year. I worked at a pretty high-end Mediterranean bistro. My second Valentine's there, it was probably the busiest night I've ever worked as a server. We had reservations that booked basically the entire restaurant, including the bar and patio, from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. No walk-ins were to be seated unless a reservation was cancelled or someone with a reservation didn't show up. Most of the customers were pretty understanding and either waited or simply left. One dude, however, kept pushing and asking every 10 minutes how much longer until he's seated, constantly saying he's a regular customer and how his date is going to be there at 7. He got there at 6. We insisted that once a table was available and all the customers before him were seated, he'd get a table, but because of the amount of reservations, we couldn't guarantee he would even get a table at all. At about 6:50, the guy loses it, fast walks up to the hostess stand where the reservation book is, grabs the reservation book and practically runs out the front door. Now, everything is going to complete crap because the only copy of the reservations for the night that is barely half over is gone. Two of the owners ran outside to follow the guy and try and get the book back, but by the time they get out, he had already left the parking lot. Even better is, 2 hours later, chaos is still running rampant, and the dude shows back up saying he has a reservation for 2. 3 of the 5 owners, all brothers, escorted the dude and his date out to the parking lot and banned him from the restaurant permanently. They even took a picture of him and posted it in the window saying, "Do not serve this man." In conclusion, salty dude without a reservation steals reservation book and then tries to come back later. Also, if anyone wants to use this for a sitcom, feel free. Just let me reprise my role as the waiter and we can call it even. I used to work front desk at a hotel. One Valentine's Day I was working the night shift and this woman comes down with a cut above her eyebrow, looking like she just went a few rounds in the ring with a boxer. Woman starts sobbing and asks us to call the cops, which we do immediately. Turns out this girl's boyfriend just beat the crap out of her during a fight, and from what I could tell, this probably wasn't the first time. So after the cops show up and haul the dude off, my manager offers her a different room on comp, as we need to leave the guy's stuff where it is for him to pick up the next day. She accepts and I go up with the woman to help her collect her stuff and move to the new room. There were a bunch of bottles of alcohol in the room and she donated them to the front desk staff. I got a bottle of Hypnotic and some vodka. Manager got a bottle of Patron. Cherry on top of everything, the dude's wife called later that night saying someone had stolen his card as he was out of town on a business trip. Never one to defend an abuser, I told her where she could find her husband. Fun times. Thanks for telling the wife. My mother has been cheated on and the hotel staff wasn't able to tell her anything. I understand why they're not able to, but thank you for doing that for a stranger. I was a delivery driver for a fruit bouquet company and I had 2 arrangements from the same guy. Routes were made for me and the truck was loaded so there was no way I could mess this up. Delivered both arrangements to the appropriate address. I headed back to the store to find the store owner and the guy who sent these in an argument. This idiot put the wrong name to the houses. And it was on the card with the arrangement, along with the phone numbers. So both women called each other and then called the guy. He tried to say it was my fault. Then the person who took the order, he'd ordered it online. All we did was import the order. I hate Valentine's Day because of that place, but man, that was a great moment. I was a pastry chef at this big resort in Cape Cod. We got a special order from this guy who was coming in for his anniversary, Valentine's Day. He wanted his dessert to have "Will you marry me" written on it so he could pop the question when it came out. He called ahead to the front and back kitchen, even came in himself that morning to make sure it was good to go. The whole crew was behind him. We had cooks all night coming in to ask if it had happened yet. I wrote the inscription on the plate and dressed it to the nines with gold leaf and expensive chocolate. I'm taking a picture of the plate just before it's sent to go out and notice our head waiter come in with a weird look on his face. He says plainly, "They don't need it." She had broken up with him before the entrees hit the table. A guy did a backflip and asked a girl to be his Valentine. She declined. I walked up to him and asked if he was okay. He said it had taken him a week to perfect it. I was eating in a fine dining establishment, Chili's, several years ago. In the next booth was a really young guy who had a big bunch of roses on the seat next to him. He kept looking at his watch, looking at the roses, popping open a ring box for a peek at the ring. He did this for half an hour or so, then began calling and texting someone, presumably his girlfriend, over and over. As we were waiting for our check, he hands my wife the roses, mumbled something, and walked out. Poor guy. To clarify, I don't actually consider Chili's a fine dining experience. My wife and I had done some shopping and stopped off for a burger and beer afterward. Walking back to my dorm room once, a guy was carrying roses. I think this was around Valentine's Day, I don't remember, and he handed one to me. Made my day because it had been a crappy long day, but I wonder what kind of day he had been having to be handing out roses to strangers. A guy proposed to his girlfriend at my restaurant and she said no. The guy threw up his arms and ran out of the building. Later, while waiting for someone to pick her up, she told us it was completely out of the blue because they'd only been dating for a few months. Another V-Day, a guy raised a huge fuss over the fact that we wouldn't serve liquor to his underage girlfriend. I'm certain you mean he threw up his hands momentarily in exasperation, but I can't help picturing him running out of the restaurant, arms straight up Kermit the Frog style. I mean, I certainly would remember it more if the man went full Muppet, but I suppose real life will never be that magical. Let's break up the cringe with a genuinely heartwarming story that had no business being in this thread. Older woman, probably in her upper 90s, with her teenaged grandson at a semi-classy restaurant. She was dressed to the nines and the grandson was in a nice button-up and dress slacks. As they got seated at their table, the grandson placed a framed photo of what my friend assumed was the boy's grandfather and husband of the older woman. Found out it would have been their 70th wedding anniversary, but he had passed suddenly but peacefully a few months back. The grandfather had always wanted to take her to a nice restaurant but never had the time or money to do it. So the grandson saved up his pay from the last couple of months and even got some donations from other relatives and took her to the restaurant. They ate dinner remembering all the good times with this man. They had my friend to take a picture and she did. They tipped my friend very well. By happenstance, my friend ran into the young man some weeks later to find out the grandmother passed away a few days after that night, peacefully in her sleep, holding a photo of her beloved husband. He was so happy he could make that night special for her. Said it was the only day he saw her smile since his grandfather had passed away. He got the picture they took to the restaurant printed in wallet-sized and carried it around with him in his wallet. At my diner, an old man proposed to an old woman. He tried to get off the chair to kneel, tripped and fell, and I assume broke something since he couldn't get back up and we had to call him an ambulance. My manager had to drive her teeth to the hospital, separately because she had taken them out to eat her soup, Lord knows why, and left them on the table in the confusion. I don't know if she said yes, my manager didn't get to see them at the hospital, only pass on her teeth to the nurse. Busboy on a Las Vegas diner. An attempted proposal. Dude tries to set up sign with girlfriend's friends for her to show up and see the ring near a fountain. Duck stole the ring, they found it 2 hours later as he dropped it in the fountain. She still said yes though. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. 16 years in hospitality gives you some good stories. The most awkward? My first job as a waitress, a guy wanted to propose to his girlfriend. He came in 2 months before to book and had everything figured out. He planned to pop the question during dessert. We had champagne, balloons, and sparklers prepped for the big moment. The time comes, he drops to one knee, gives a speech about his love for her. He asks, and she says no, puts the ring in her bag, finishes her dessert, and leaves. Quite possibly the most awkward thing I've had to witness, alongside around 200 other people. The manager gave him everything for free, he felt that bad for him. Cringed up inside every time I saw him after that. The most effed up? I was working as a duty manager and one of the tills kept dropping off the network. As I was trying to fix it, I could clearly hear the conversation of the table by the waiter's station. It started out sweet enough with her excitedly telling him she was pregnant. He went quiet and didn't say anything for a bit and then asked her what the plan was. She said she was keeping the baby. He said he didn't want kids and had told her this. She had got upset and said he thought he'd be happy and change his mind when he found out. By this point I fixed the till, but I'm unable to step away from this car crash. Turns out she had stopped taking the pill without telling him, thinking she could turn him around. He said he knew she could be a little bit nuts sometimes, but this was the next level. He told her it was over and she could send someone to collect her things as he wanted nothing more to do with her. He called me over to pay the bill and just left. The guy never even shouted, he just calmly went, "F this," and noped out of there. I couldn't even look her in the eye, just left to give her her own time. The funniest was managing a hotel room service where there was a Valentine's package that included getting each course of the special menu delivered to your room. More than a few couples thought it was a good idea to call for the next course and then start doing the deed. Having to help with deliveries as reception screwed up the bookings, I had the privilege of people answering the door in the buff, seeing adult fun toys strewn around, and one where the other members of the ménage à trois were carrying on in the background. After complaints of similar instances from my team, I had to take action. I ended up having to call the offending guests and tell them if they could not respect my team by answering the door in at least a closed dressing gown, they could come down and collect the rest of their meal from the restaurant. Bonus from the same night, had to call an ambulance for a woman with a dislocated shoulder. The guy admitted that they were trying to recreate a particular kind of scene in the shower using the conditioner as, the splooge. He slipped in the conditioner and fell on her. Back when I served food at one of those super touristy seafood restaurants, I worked a Valentine's Day double shift. For lunch, this younger couple came in celebrating their 1-year anniversary. I offer my congratulations and then proceed to do my usual spiel before taking orders. The girl is looking more and more dismayed the longer I talk. Finally, I get to the end and ask if there's any allergies. She looks at her boyfriend and says, "Yes, I'm allergic to fish and shellfish." Then looks over at me, very sad. I made sure every aspect of her meal was fine for her, but it was that look of, "We've been dating a year and he still takes me to a restaurant that could kill me," that really did it for me. Not a table I was serving, but back in my Olive Garden days, we had a man who looked to be in his mid-20s tap his empty wine glass with a fork to call for attention of the surrounding strangers, then get down on one knee with a silver band in hand and ask his girlfriend to accept his promise ring. She looked horrified start to finish.
Did she accept the promise ring, though?
Oh, hell no. They went outside to talk and she came back in to settle the bill without him. In college, I waited tables, and Valentine's was always a good one in terms of tips. I once saw a couple come in to eat. Halfway through the dinner, the man's wife showed up to surprise the couple. The wife took the wine bottle and poured the remnants over her husband's head, took off her ring, and told the girlfriend she could have him. He tipped me $100.
You gotta think that your wife might think something's up when you're busy on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, this guy doesn't seem to be the brightest bulb in the chandelier. Had a man and a woman sharing dessert, and the man playfully put a bit of ice cream on her nose. She then did the same, and he did it back once more, but with a different flavor of ice cream. She then flipped out at him because,
"You know I like chocolate the most. Why would you waste it, you idiot?"
In the end, she stormed out because the man couldn't comprehend how much she was blowing up the situation. I would imagine the gentleman in question had the shocked Pikachu expression on his face for several seconds before chasing his partner out. I know I would have. I was the manager of a wings and pizza place with a full bar. Definitely not the kind of place you'd take someone for a romantic Valentine's Day dinner, but it was still busy because some people aren't very tactful. We had a guy who'd called ahead and asked if we could put a ring in a dessert for him, and of course we obliged. He dropped the ring off a day ahead, and I put it in the safe in our office to keep it secure. Fast forward to Valentine's Day, the couple shows up and they're so obviously in love that she didn't seem to notice or care about the fact that he had brought her to a middle-of-the-road place with a sports bar atmosphere on the most romantic day of the year. They ordered champagne, well, the local winery's best sparkling white, entrees, and it was almost time for dessert. I'd used my chef skills to whip up a special chocolate strawberry tart that wasn't on the menu just for this occasion. Because why not try to make their night at least a little fancy? I went to the safe to get the ring, and it wasn't there. I was freaking out big time. I asked everyone there if they knew what the frick had happened to it. My assistant manager on site had no idea, so I called my other assistant, who also had the safe code, and they didn't know either. Finally, my bar manager mentioned that one of the owners had been in earlier and spent a little time in the office. So, at my wit's end, I called the owner. It turns out that he'd seen the ring in the safe and thought it was something a customer had left behind. Figuring that he'd come into an extremely lucky situation, he decided, like the scumbag he was, that he'd take it for himself and save money on a gift for his wife on Valentine's. So I asked the server and bar manager to help stall the couple. The server told them that we were going to do something special for their big date and to hold tight. I ran out, hopped in my car, and rushed to get the ring from the owner's house, because he was, as I'd mentioned, a scumbag and didn't want to be bothered with bringing the ring to the restaurant himself. The bar manager went over to the table and did some complicated tableside cocktail mix that had a bunch of flair bartending tricks and ended with a flaming shot that, once dropped into the rest, made it smoke. I was really disappointed when I heard about all of this because I would have loved to see it instead of breaking a ton of traffic laws on my quest to get the one ring. Finally, I rushed back in after about 15 minutes of being on the brink of a heart attack, placed the ring on the dessert, and had their server take it out. At that point, just about the entire staff was watching the table, and when we saw the look on her face, my heart finally started beating again. She said yes, and I started looking for someone else to work for the very next day.
Operation Scumbag is a success. Eagle has landed.
This is the best Valentine's Day story I've ever read. It was so awesome of you to go to all that trouble to make their night special, and that boss was a scumbag. I would have told his wife if it was me. I was working for a certain high-end chain steakhouse in the northwest corner of Greater Los Angeles, in the Valley. Valentine's is obviously one of the top 5 busiest days of the year for us. We did about 500 covers between 5 and 10 p.m. It's also a restaurant with a very open concept floor plan. Booths along the 4 walls of the restaurant and an array of tables in the middle with no partitions or anything between them. A younger couple, maybe mid-20s, dressed to the nines, came in shortly after we opened and were seated at a table basically in dead center of the dining room. They were very friendly and pleasant, and I could tell that for them, dining in our restaurant was a really special treat. So I did everything in my power to make it special for them. When they were done, probably around 7, I brought their check, which was around $300. When I came back to pick it up, the guy had a super embarrassed look on his face, and he said he thinks he left his wallet in the car, and the woman, who was embarrassed for him, doesn't have anything with her because her dress had no pockets and she didn't bring a purse. So he goes out and 5 minutes later comes back in looking pale as a ghost. He has left his wallet at home and asks if he can call back later with payment info. My GM won't let this fly because there's no collateral of any sort he can leave, so the guy has to drive home to Burbank to get his wallet while the woman waits with her hair done and her red lipstick and her pretty dress in the middle of our dining room on Valentine's Day. Now, on the best day with no traffic, which never happens, it's at least 40 minutes each way from our restaurant to Burbank. She was there for almost 2 hours waiting for this guy. We were all so embarrassed for her that the staff kept discreetly slipping her drinks and little amuse-bouche bites from the kitchen. It was one of the most awkward things I've ever seen in a restaurant. When he finally got back, he was super apologetic to us and to her. He paid the check and tipped like 30% and they left. It was pretty obvious it was an honest mistake, but I still think about that couple from time to time, and I wonder how things worked out for them. I set my hair on fire and spilled a full Stella on a lady. I work in a casual fine dining steakhouse. Luckily for me, the lady I spilled the Stella on was super understanding, and her husband said across the table, "Well, now she has to take her pants off." So that could have gone worse for me.
Why did you set your hair on fire before spilling on the lady? Just to feel alive?
Candles are my enemy. I have belly button long hair. You might want to consider shaving it if you have so much belly button hair it's just a fire hazard. I was working as a waitress in a sushi restaurant, and on Valentine's Day it was an all-hands-on-deck shift. This guy I'd just started seeing wanted to go out, but I told him I was working in food service. You never get Valentine's Day off, and we just had to celebrate the day after or the weekend after. Nope. He got so upset that he went and asked a different girl out, came to the restaurant I worked at on V-Day, and sat in my section. He then proceeded to spend the entire evening making a fool out of himself and making his date uncomfortable as he tried to make me jealous. Needless to say, we didn't ever go out again. Ever.
911 operators. What is that one call that you can never forget? Many of these stories will be sad and graphic. Viewer discretion is advised. Harley motorcycle tipped over and the clutch lever went into a 4-year-old's eye. Parent was on the line asking what to do. Suddenly, she said, "They're going to lift the motorcycle." I emphatically told her to tell them to stop and wait for rescue and EMS. Rescue ended up cutting off the clutch lever and transporting the kid to the hospital. She underwent surgery. That was 1982. Just last year, I met the lead rescue officer and the girl herself, now fully grown. They wanted to meet the 911 operator that saved her vision. I'm a dispatcher for a cab company. One day, I got a call from an old man who seemed as if his voice was trembling. I'm naturally polite, as I asked for his drop-off address. He said, "The emergency room." I casually said, "Feeling a little under the weather, eh?" And he responded, "I tried to take my life. I vomited most of the pills up, and now I feel miserable. Can you send a cab quick?" "Certainly, sir. Anything else I can do for you?" I talked to him for 15 minutes before the cab pulled up and the driver carried him out to his car. He told me his life story and why he tried to end it. I visited him in the hospital as soon as my shift was over. He still calls for a cab every day to take him to a barbecue restaurant. I had a call that started out pretty dumb but was actually pretty serious. 911, where's your emergency? 123 Main Street. Okay, what's going on there? I'd like to order a pizza for delivery. Oh great, another prank call. Ma'am, you've reached 911. Yeah, I know. Can I have a large with half pepperoni, half mushroom and peppers? I'm sorry, you know you've called 911, right? Yeah, do you know how long it'll be? Okay, ma'am, is everything okay over there? Do you have an emergency? Yes, I do. And you can't talk about it because there's someone in the room with you? Moment of realization. Yes, that's correct. Do you know how long it'll be? I have an officer about a mile from your location. Are there any weapons in your house? No. Can you stay on the phone with me? Nope. See you soon. Thanks. As we dispatch the call, I check the history at the address and see there are multiple previous domestic violence calls. The officer arrives and finds a couple. Female was kind of banged up, and the boyfriend was drunk. Officer arrests him after she explains that the boyfriend had been beating her for a while. I thought she was pretty clever to use that trick. Definitely one of the most memorable calls. I'm not a 911 operator, but I spent time doing OnStar/telematics type stuff, and the moments you remember are those when you're still connected to the vehicle once the dispatch has been made after an accident. I've heard a brother beg for his other brother not to die as he bled out. Not sure if he actually did. The one that has stuck with me the most is the one I initially heard the least on. Airbag signal connected to a vehicle. I heard a sigh and then silence outside. Nothing but the sounds of passing traffic. A coworker then completes the dispatch, standard procedure, and I attempt to make a contact a time or two with no luck. It's simply a matter of remaining on the line to listen to make sure the ambulance gets there. Then, a car stops, and I hear talking in the background. Soon after, someone else stops. Finally, someone starts the last rites type of prayer after asking someone to join hands. I realized then that what I heard at the very beginning of the call was their last breath. The only time that this person's entire existence crossed mine was at the last possible moment, and they don't even know it. Life is fickle. Be good to everyone. I was a 911 dispatcher for several years, and one of my most memorable calls was a hysterical woman at about midnight one stormy night. She was absolutely incomprehensible. I kept saying, "Ma'am, you have to calm down. I can't understand you. Ma'am." This went on for what felt like forever. I couldn't get anything useful out of her. My officers were en route to this obviously horrifying situation. Finally, she said something about being with her sister. "How old is your sister?" 1. Instantly suspicious, I asked, "How old are you?" 5. A 5-year-old boy. So that's how I inadvertently called a little boy ma'am many times. Oops. The storm had woken him up and his parents were gone. They went out to move their cars to shelter in case of hail. He was just very scared. My officers still responded and talked to the parents about not leaving sleeping children alone, but everybody was unscathed. It wasn't my most tragic call, but it is one I've never forgotten. Poor little ma'am. Just a reminder that if you like what you're hearing, remember to subscribe to Am I the Genius and Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. Thanks for watching. My first call I ever had to dispatch on the radio. 2 homeless dudes blowing each other on the bus. I'm sorry it's not serious or traumatic, but it'll always stay with me. I used to work as a relay operator, 711, and often got misdialed 911 calls. We would connect them to 911, but since they connected through us, we had to stay on the line. One time, I got an old woman who fell out of bed and couldn't get up. I connected her to 911, and from there they tracked her location. The 911 operator is like, "Ma'am, are you in such and such hospital? Are you calling from a hospital?" "Yes, I fell and no one will help me." Not sure what the 911 operator did, but about 10 minutes later, you hear someone come into her room to help her up. Apparently, this woman fell out of her hospital bed and no one noticed for over an hour until she dragged herself to the phone and called 911. I was like, note to self, never go to this hospital. 911 dispatcher here. I took a call once of a house being on fire, so of course, we send the fire department out. Soon as they arrive on the scene, they ask for the police to respond. Police don't typically respond to this area with the fire department. Turns out the story was that a girl's fiancé arrives home and dumps gas on her and lights her on fire. She then runs to the shower to try to put herself out. He follows her, turns the shower off, dumps more gas on her, and lights her back on fire. She then runs through the house, thereby lighting the house on fire. She then runs out of the house as the fire department arrives on scene. So when FD pulled up, they had arrived to a body collapsed in the yard on fire. When PD arrives, the male fiancé walks out of the burning house, lets himself into the back of a police car, and says, "Take me to jail." My mom was a 911 dispatcher for over 30 years. She had many crazy calls, but one story she told me always stuck out from the rest. One day, a man called in. With a calm voice, he told my mom he was in a local hotel and that he had doused himself with gasoline and was going to end his life. He called in so they could evacuate the hotel because, quote, "I don't want to hurt anyone else." While my mom is trying to talk him out of it, she is on another line to the hotel letting them know what's going on and to get everyone out. While emergency services are en route, she has to stay on the line whenever possible to keep people calm, reassure them help is on the way, and to try her best to keep track of what's up on the other end. As soon as the guy heard the sirens coming in the distance, he asked her if everyone had been evacuated yet. She tried to stall her answer, thinking he'd light himself up as soon as she said yes. Didn't work. Seconds later, she stated hearing the worst screams she's ever heard, and she's heard many during that job over the years, and the phone went static, and then silence. He died in that hotel and mom had to listen. Lousy day. I wasn't a 911 operator, but a supervisor for AT&T's 00 info directory information. Think 411. While remotely listening in on some agents one evening, one particular call was escalated to Tier 2 for assistance. On the other end of the line was a woman who was hysterical, saying her husband was trying to kill her. Protocol dictates that we trace the number to the local LEC, local exchange carrier, and notify law enforcement in that area. We do this, but we had no way to connect the call to the local sheriff dispatch. Silly, I know, but we technically weren't true operators, and our equipment didn't support that functionality. Basically, we had to act as a relay between the LEO and the victim on the phone. By this time, I had moved from my office to seat myself next to the Tier 2 agent to help her keep her cool while everything was going down. The agent, let's call her April, because that was her name, was handling the call very well at first, but started to lose her mind as the call progressed. While listening in on the call next to April and trying to convey what is going on to the LEO at the other line, we hear the woman who initially called in say, "He went to get an axe. Ma'am, where are you now? I'm locked in the bathroom. Please hurry." The sheriff's office is on their way. They say they are 5 minutes out. Then, we hear loud banging on the door. Her husband was trying to chop his way through the door with the axe. April lost it when she heard the woman start screaming, knowing her husband was coming after her with an axe. She threw her headset off and walked away, saying something like, "I can't do it, Lucky Ink, I can't." April heads off to the ladies' room to collect herself. So I pick up the headset to reassure the lady on the phone. "Ma'am, the sheriff is at your house now. Where is your husband?" "Back bathroom. He's at the door." More loud banging from the axe. By this time, the woman was overly hysterical and crying madly. Then, "Sheriff's Department, drop the axe." "Sheriff's Department, drop the axe." Pop, 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 pop. The local LEO dispatch directed me to ask the lady to open the bathroom door, and she does. The next voice I heard on her phone was a sheriff deputy. All he said was this: "The situation is under control, operator. Disengage the call." I still get chills and all teary thinking about it. Hi guys, I actually am a 911 operator. First ever 911 I answered was about a naked man sitting in a bathtub on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. He was drunk, and we still don't know where he got the tub. Edit, West Tennessee, since everyone keeps asking. The one that stayed with me gave childbirth instructions to a deaf father via relay for his deaf wife. They were the victims of a home invasion and were tied to chairs. Burglars saw her in labor, panicked, then left. Took Dad hours to free himself and call. While giving the instructions, I obtained a suspect description to put out to surrounding agencies. They were caught in the city to our north during the call. Baby boy was born perfectly healthy. I worked in a call center a few years ago. Not for 911, but for general purchases for car parts. Anyway, some guy phones me asking for a car part, find the part number, and place the order as I would normally do. I then hear him sigh and begin to cry. Naturally, I ask if everything is okay, and his response is, "You don't want to listen to my problems, mate." Me being a kind guy who wanted to get rid of some of his shift, I said, "Sure, what's up?" and ended up having so many feels. Turns out his wife had motor neuron disease and had very recently passed away, and he was fixing up her car to sell it on. He said it got to the stage where she couldn't walk, then couldn't speak, couldn't do basic tasks such as dress herself or shower, etc. Eventually, she didn't even recognize his face, and the disease ultimately took her. He then tells me about how he has to move house as he can't stand to be in the property without his wife anymore, and that he had 80,000 pounds worth of pills in a drawer that he had nothing to do with. He said he'll probably donate them to charity. Anyway, after about a 50-minute conversation with him, he was so glad that he asked for the company address. Now, I was new on the job, so I didn't realize the dangers of disclosing this information, but I gave it to him, and that Christmas, I received a card from him saying thanks for taking the time to listen to him, and that it really helped him get through a tough time just speaking to someone about it. So yeah, he was such a nice guy, and I'll remember him for the rest of my days because he really made an impact on me with the story. TLDR, guy orders car parts, cries, I proceed to have so many feels. Edit, oh my goodness, first gold, thank you so much. I honestly never expected such a great response. Edit 2. Relearning about motor neuron disease and having so many flashbacks of the guy's explanation as to what it does exactly, etc. Wouldn't wish this upon your worst enemy. Edit 3. I'd like to thank everyone for all the nice comments and PMs I'm receiving. Also, the hourly rate for the car part therapist has increased from free to 150 pounds per hour. I'm actually a police call taker. Throwaway because it's about time I made one and because confidentiality. But sorry. The reason you're not getting many real answers is because we can't talk about much. Got a call just yesterday on the non-emergency line from a very old, very proud German-Canadian man who just babbled on for 5 minutes straight about having come to Canada before World War II in a boat with windows and helped build Canada and loved Harper and he built skyscrapers and was a plumber and blah 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 and would not be interrupted. I just sat back on mute and laughed my butt off. When I finally went to kick him off the line, he finished with,
Long live AmITheA! Long live Canada! I love everybody! I love this place!
Yes, I know my accent is bad. Before my grandma died, we had to call 911 to get her to the hospital. An older lady, for some reason still an EMT, or first responder, I forgot, came to the house. She had trouble getting up all the stairs to the front door and fell backwards. She thought she hit her head, so she touched it and saw blood all over her palm. In reality, she just scraped her hands, but thought the blood was from her head, so she fainted. We had to call another ambulance. So, as a med student, I worked as an emergency phone operator for night shifts. One unusually quiet night, I had a call at about 3 a.m. A nice old lady was asking for just somebody to talk to because she had insomnia and just woke up from a terrible nightmare. Now, usually I was angry when something like this happened, people calling in the middle of the night for some BS that clearly isn't a medical emergency, but this old woman was so sweet and polite that I decided to just have a nice talk with her. Also, all the other lines were quiet at the time. She told me her name and that ever since her husband was sent to a nursing home several weeks ago, she was afraid that something terrible might happen to him. About 1 hour ago, she awoke and just felt that something bad had happened, and now she felt so anxious and alone at home, just wanted to hear a human voice, someone to talk to. She kept excusing herself for calling in the middle of the night and wasting my time. And then I got a call on the second line. It was the nursing home where her husband was sent. Yo, we got a dead here. Died 1 hour ago. Sent over the doctor for a death certificate. Needless to say, the man who just died had the same last name as the nice lady I had been talking to. I am a 911 operator. My favorite call I personally took that I won't forget is about a couple at McDonald's. They had just purchased a new vehicle and went out to celebrate the purchase at a local McDonald's. The wife, for some reason, decided she had better check the spare tire and make sure they had one before they left town, and found a gun instead. I received a call from the wife stating she just accidentally shot her husband. When I was asking about exit wounds, she said it did not penetrate but burned him real badly. Turns out, wife shot the husband with a flare gun when she went to show it to him. They did not finish their Big Macs, and I'm not sure how that marriage ended up. He wasn't a happy man on the way to the emergency room to get burn treatment. Former Sheriff's Department dispatcher in charge of non-emergency and 911 calls for a rural southern county. I picked up the job part-time and was in the process of training. My supervisor was sitting next to me listening to my end of the call, but she was not hooked into the line to hear the whole call. Line rings, I answer. It's 911. A young girl, less than 10 years old, is telling me that she, her mother, and her baby sibling are locked in a bedroom. Her uncle is pacing around outside the door holding a knife and threatening to kill them all. She does not know the house number/fire number where they are, and mom is basically checked out of the conversation out of fear. I have a vague idea of where she is, so I send deputies in her direction with the promise that I will get better directions. As is typical in rural areas, everybody owned a scanner and listened like it was their job. My phone starts ringing off the hook, so I am reassuring this little girl on one headset and holding a second headset up to my other ear taking directions from concerned members of the public. Directions like, go until you see a broke down truck, keep going. When you get to the second broke down truck, turn right and continue until you see a large rock. It was also late enough in the evening that everything was dark out. The little girl tells me there might be a back door that is unlocked. Members of the public who know the house just from the general location and number/gender of occupants are calling in confirming that there is a back door that my deputy should enter through and that they will not be seen by the perpetrator if he has retreated to the living room. My guys arrive, sneak in the back, walk right up to the guy sitting in a recliner, disarm him, and arrest him. Family gets emergency protective orders so he, ideally, cannot be a threat to them again. I almost quit after that call because my adrenaline was running. I was shaking, and I'd had to handle it mostly myself because my supervisor couldn't hear what was going on. I stayed with it, and it was one of the best jobs I had. I quit when I moved to another state, but it was a sad decision to make. Edit, I would like to add that the whole not being able to find your house in the country thing was extremely common back then, and I cannot speak to current systems in rural areas. I also got extensive public help via scanner listeners the time a home security company called to report a possible break-in or medical emergency, but they only had a billing address on file, no directions to the house whatsoever. If you have any kind of company servicing your home, make sure they have your actual street address/fire number and a backup detailed set of directions to your home, including landmarks. I don't want to ever see anyone in an easily preventable emergency because ADP doesn't have the details necessary to send someone to your home. Allow me to offer a funny story in place of these serious ones. I was an intern at a local police department and I was working with dispatch for the day. We received a call from a concerned citizen complaint. 911, what is your emergency? I'm sorry, ma'am. Could you please speak up? I said there's 2 guys screwing in a parked truck. Yes, ma'am. We'll get someone out there immediately. The operator hung up and we both immediately started laughing. He had the caller on speaker so I could listen. I asked him if he was going to send someone out there, and he just shrugged and told me sometimes people need some fun. Edit, my newest, most upvoted comment is about butt stuff. Nice. Edit 2, I should talk about butt stuff more often on Reddit. Edit 3, gold for talking about butt stuff. Reddit, I love you so very much. And thank you, most kind and generous stranger. I have much love for you as well. Not an actual 911 call, but I did get a 911 call while working at a tattoo shop. A customer calls me, gives me his address, tells me to not ask questions, come over, don't knock, but rather break a window and come on in. What I find is him and his girlfriend were on the bed doggy style. I say, whoa, I don't mind the show, but I'm not sure if I want to join. Turns out they had gotten their piercings caught. The bar at the base of his had gotten caught in her hoop. Not a 911 operator, but Grandma was a telephone operator back in the day when operators actually connected calls. First call ever on first day on the job. Kid zipped his junk in a zipper. She said she could hear the kids screaming in the background. So, she put it through to the fire department because, quote, I figured they were all guys there, so they know what to do.
What's the grossest example of personal hygiene that you've ever seen or smelled? I used to work retail, and one day we had this woman come into the store who had not showered for months. She stunk the whole store up from just walking around. We had to ask her to leave due to hygiene. I'll never forget that stench. It was like low tide and a dead body had been sitting around for a month. When I worked at a lingerie store, one of my first nights when I was still being supervised, a couple came in. The man was scraggly and a bit dirty looking, and the woman looked very clean. But there was a smell, a fishy smell, and my boss and I both assumed it was coming from the man. So we let the woman try on a couple of sets. Oh my god, we were wrong. We were so wrong. We had to air out the dressing room and steam clean the lingerie. It was awful. I have a girlfriend who thought it was normal for guys to have dingleberries. Poor girl was going down on a guy with matted poop fur down there. Okay, this one out of all of them made me audibly gasp. What the frick? I had to Google dingleberries. Oh, what the frick? I'm sitting in my living room by myself yelling out loud at this one. I work in an ER in a low-income area. There was this one that I'll never forget. She was a mid-40s obese hoarder who had decided it wasn't worth the effort to get out of her recliner for 2 weeks straight. She had a fridge within reach, so she wasn't hungry, but was producing feces and urine the entire time without getting up to use the restroom or clean herself. You could smell her down the hall with the door closed, and her behind was literally rotting away with pressure sores down to her bones. Oh, but how can you stand that? Probably nerve damage, and she'd slowly desensitized herself to being in that situation by building up behavior. I believe in this case she had some severe depression as well, which definitely could have contributed. Once the pressure sores are through the full skin thickness, they're past the pain receptors. They stop hurting and further damage isn't noticed. Someone once came into my ER that had been laying in their own spew, most pungent but definitely other bodily fluids for several days, and the stomach acid had eroded her skin. She was pulling off chunks of her scalp, then playing with the skin and hair, all in a substances-induced state. Stay away from substances, kids. Well, I'm about 1/10 of the way through this script and I already want to burn it, all the stories, and the entire internet to the ground. Oh well, only the rest of the video to go. You're welcome, listeners. I worked at an engine assembly plant in New York State where everyone else is in these 3 to 5 station teams that rotate every hour, so you don't go crazy doing the same job for 8+ hours. We had this dude who came to our group who had the nastiest teeth I've ever seen in my life. His bottom front teeth were all fused together into one big lower tusk, and his breath could gag a maggot. It got so difficult to work with the guy, you could smell his breath from at least 6 feet away. that we had to go to a manager to figure out how to handle it and not be buttholes. Well, all they could do was tell him he needed to do something about it, so he constantly had a tub of mints on him. After that, his breath just smelled like a rotting corpse and mint. So, yay. As someone who's been through this earlier in my life, I beg you to go easy on people who have the rotting smell on their breath, because there's no hiding it. It's their teeth you smell rotting. I spent most of my teenage years homeless and without insurance until I was 25. My teeth started falling apart when I was 14. Apparently, my adult teeth came in with very weak enamel, and I was always told I would take lots of visits to keep them in good health. By the time I had insurance, it was so bad that the $2,000 a year plans that everyone has would not cover anything resembling a helpful solution. Even just getting dentures and pulling the teeth was going to be $12,000 or up. I was embarrassed all the time. I spoke to no one unless I was 10 plus feet away, never looked anyone in the eye, and never smiled even when I had a reason to. In the end, all my teeth needed replacing, but specifically, all of my molars had rotted down to below the gum line, and I learned to chew soft food with my tongue. So I get it, bad breath is bad, but try to see it from their point of view. Rotting teeth suck, and unless you have a plan without a yearly limit, which barely exists these days, it's hard to do anything about it. Mine was out of my control. I brushed and flossed daily, as I was supposed to, and they still fell apart. My first tooth crumbled while I was eating mac and cheese, which is not strong enough to break a tooth. I lived in a triple dorm when I was a sophomore in college, 2 friends and myself. When my friend transferred to a different school over Christmas break, the college automatically added in a third person as our dorm had the only opening on campus. The girl was a year younger than us, not a huge deal, but the problem developed a few days after she moved in with us. There was a slight odor when she walked by. The odor grew day by day. We began to realize that she wasn't showering. We had an ensuite bathroom and we would hear the water turned on in the shower for about 5 minutes, but she never came out with wet hair or looking any different than when she went in. We went for a soft approach at first. We went to Bath & Body Works and got her a really nice basket of scented soaps and shampoos and conditioners, because she only had one very odd generic shampoo that she had had in the shower. She was very grateful and we thought that would be the end of it. She put the shower items in the shower and literally nothing else changed. The levels on the soaps and shampoo didn't go down. The smell was getting worse. We sat down with her and had a serious but concerned conversation. We said we were worried about her and wanted to know if she was okay and how we could help. She said everything was fine and nobody else had ever mentioned her smelling bad. I find that completely impossible as she was surrounded by a stench of body odor coming from every pore. She said she'd shower more. She began going to parties, which we thought would make her clean up a bit, but it didn't. She would just add cheap alcohol to the body odor scent. After about a month, my roommate and I went to the dorm advisor and explained what the situation was and how we were done. She was smelling worse every day and was beginning to be very snotty to us. The residence director met with her, and although he couldn't tell us what happened during the meeting, he verified that he could smell the odor coming off her. Thankfully, she had made a friend, a very odd duck, but a duck I'm still thankful for, and that friend's roommate moved out. She moved within a week. We ran into her on campus every now and then. Same stink. I had a friend with very low self-esteem, could never find a girlfriend, self-pity kind of guy. He had the worst grime and film on his teeth. I told him he won't find a girlfriend unless he cleans his teeth because it's repulsive to anyone with any respect for themselves, in less words. He denied it, saying someone will like him for him, blah blah blah. Well, one day his grandma paid for him to see a dentist who made them pearly whites once again. Not 2 weeks later, he had himself a girlfriend. Still thinks it was never the problem. Woman was a heavy smoker, which can cause a lot of issues in itself, and bad BO like she never showered, and the list goes on and on. But the worst thing was this nasty brown blouse that she wore all the time, and I mean like 4 days a week at least. But she did wear other things occasionally because they always jumped out. Thing is, there was a picture on her desk wearing that blouse from like 5 or 6, whatever years before, and it was white in the picture. I just thought it was coincidence, and no way it was the same one, till one of her co-workers who shared the office with her started complaining about her one day when she was gone, and the woman confirmed it was the same shirt and she had slowly watched it change from white to whatever disgusting color it currently was over the years. My granddad did quit eventually, but my nan smoked until she died. Anyway, I'm there with my mom and aunt cleaning the house, and they always had this yellow/green wallpaper. Start taking family pictures off the walls and suddenly this lovely baby blue wallpaper is staring right at us. A guy we call the Stink Beast. I was a rent-to-own delivery guy right out of college. We had a regular customer that smelled like a sock stuffed with boiled cabbage and soaked in diarrhea, all the time. He also only wore tank tops. I went to his nasty house to pick up a stereo he couldn't pay for. I spent 20 minutes in his house unhooking wires, etc. There was dog crap on the couch next to me in more than one spot. And I mean actual turds, not a smear or something. I rolled the stereo out on a dolly through several more piles of crap and loaded the stereo into the van. As I'm ready to close the door, he runs out with a wad of cash and wants me to put it back. While I'm writing up a new ticket, he leans in to adjust something on the stereo. His sweaty, hairy pit jams right into my face. It was like getting hit in the face with a used diaper. I immediately whirl around and spew in his yard. While I'm trying to be nice and pretending to get the flu, his dog proceeds to come over and eat said spew. So yeah, this guy. Bonus to the story, 2 years or so after this happened, I saw the stink beast at an old country buffet. I told my wife that he was there, and her reply was that he must be the guy in the blue tank top. She said she could smell him from the opposite side of the steam table. Said people were sniffing the steamer like something had spoiled. I had a part-time job at uni cleaning out student rooms after the occupants had moved out. One room was left with no fewer than 28 bottles of urine that the occupant had decided to just leave in the room. The shared bathroom was next door. Yep, as someone who lived in student accommodation, I'm just surprised it took this long for the first example from that kind of dorm to show up. And an abundance of pee bottle stories follows. My buddy supervises commercial building construction. He constantly has to reprimand and discourage the workers from peeing in bottles, then sealing them in the walls, all because they're too lazy to walk to the porta potty and too lazy to throw the bottles away. I'm currently imagining future archaeologists quizzing each other over the meaning of why our civilization sealed urine into walls. I peed in a lemonade container in middle school so I could get some weird middle school clout, but without a plan, I panicked and stuffed it in my locker. I was so paranoid about taking it out and getting caught that I just left it in there, and since it was a little buried under unused binders, I pretty much forgot about it until cleaning my locker for the end of the year. Middle school was too strange of a time for me. This guy and his family didn't like to shower, and they all had food stains all over their clothing, but the father smelled like he pooped himself, smelled like pee, and that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was he had food stuck in his hair and maggots crawling in it. Literally, the guy smelled like death. He said I was being offensive because I stood 10 feet away from him. Guy had the nerve to call my manager over, who then immediately stuck his hand up and said he wasn't interested in hearing his story, that he needed to leave and not come back until he took a shower. After this is when he started taking care of himself. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I met a girl on a dating app and we got along well online, but she smelled like crap in person. I'm talking fully clothed and several feet away, there was still this stench of poop. I was really embarrassed for her, to be honest. She complained about guys ghosting her and not knowing why. I mean, it's not easy to tell someone they smell like butt. I don't know how you couldn't be aware of it either. Nose blindness is a thing. You stop smelling the things you're used to. I remember a story about how Febreze, which eliminated odors, was having trouble getting going. Some people from the company were interviewing regular people about their habits, and they came across an old cat lady whose house absolutely reeked. When they subtly and politely asked about cat smell, the lady replied that it was amazing that with so many cats around, they didn't smell at all, and that's why she didn't need to use Febreze. This is also why smokers think other people can't tell they're smokers. We can, and why some women who have a favorite perfume end up drenching themselves in it over time as they stop being able to smell the regular dose. I worked on a dairy farm growing up in Wisconsin. If you don't already know, dairy farms smell terrible. I would always smell the farm at first when I showed up to work, and after a while you no longer smell it. The kids in high school made fun of how I smelled, even though I wore clean clothes and took showers every night when I came home from work. Fast forward to me coming home for the first time in a year after joining the army, I'm going through some old clothes and wow, the stench on those things, even though they were washed, was quite strong. I threw them out. So yeah, nose blindness is definitely a thing. So I used to work at this really upscale vegan hot pot restaurant a few years ago. The owner-operator was very adamant on how it's okay not to wash your hands because in my country, washing hands meant you're cleaning off the hard work you've done. She was the only one who wouldn't, even after using the bathroom. We knew she wouldn't wash her hands. She'd use gloves, yes, since she handled food sometimes, but even then, still wash your fricking hands. Also, my ex told me he didn't think it was necessary to wash his pee-pee because my wang just washes itself when the shampoo runs down my body in the shower. People say that about their feet too. Wash your damn feet. You do not want nasty feet. Especially if you're diabetic. You get nasty feet, you get ulcers, you get an infection, now you have no feet to wash. I'm a nurse, so I've seen some crap, but the worst would be a woman with scabies and fleas. I don't know how she got them, but she was so ashamed of having them that she basically just barricaded herself at home for some weeks until her daughter got her admitted to the hospital. I'm not exaggerating when I say that everything on her jumped when you came close to her bed or she moved. She had them everywhere, and I mean everywhere. I spare you the description of her intimate area. Ugh, my aunt is a nurse and she had some stories. One that stuck out was a large obese woman who came in and they had to bathe her. My aunt said she lifted up her bosom only to be greeted by live maggots. Oh, I'm going away now. Goodbye. I dated a hippie. Now, he showered every day, but he never used soap or shampoo because of chemicals. We did the deed a couple of times, and yeah, he was a bit whiffy, but nothing too grotesque. I'm into perfumery, so also have a thing for the smells of humans. I was cool with it. One day, he wanted me to rim him. My mind immediately went to the fact that he never used soap, so his butthole was probably in, well, pretty crappy shape. I sensually suggested we take our adult fun times to the shower. I seductively got in the shower and made a big deal of soaping him up from top to bottom, finishing on his butthole. The water ran brown. It ran brown from years of built-up crap. I watched as the densely, poopy, soapy water went down the drain and realized I could do better in life. Or at least stop dating hippies. I work in medical, so I've seen a lot, but one of my good friends who is a high-level marketing person at a university and has a master's degree asked me how often I clean my house. I found out she showers once every 10 days, has numerous skin infections, wipes off kitchen counters maybe once a month once things get moldy, etc. But the worst part was when she told me she never changes or washes her sheets. She had them on her bed for 2 years and never took them off until she threw them away because she bought new ones. And I feel bad when I don't change my sheets after 1 week. After a night at the bar, I went home with this cute guy who outwardly seemed pretty normal and attractive. Got to his place and it was filled with garbage. Like a layer of garbage spread on the floor. I had a few drinks in me, so it was like, okay, he's cute, this is gross, but let's see how it goes. Takes me to his bedroom and there's literally disgusting old food and garbage in the bed and in the sheets. Like not just containers, expired, disgusting, open food directly on the bed, and lots of it. It was so revolting, I started thinking of excuses to leave. This guy was cute though, so I stuck around another 5 to 10 minutes thinking how we can work this out. We sat on the bed and literally under the sheets were filled with garbage too. He proceeds to take off his socks for whatever reason and his toenails are completely black, with long nails, and his feet are so dirty like they hadn't been washed ever. I gagged a little before bolting out of there saying I didn't feel well, which I didn't. Honestly, I was young and willing to put up with a lot, but that was a no-go. Oh my god, a lot of my girl pals have told me a lesser version of this same story, and I'd say, went home with a cute guy only to find out he's a filth wizard man-child is pretty common, but not to this extent. Unrelated, this script has been very challenging to record without gagging. If you've listened this far, I salute you. Please let me know if you've made it up to here. I have one and only one instance of insane hygiene. When I was in college, they got some dorm assignments screwed up. I played baseball and thus I was in the athletic dorm. For some reason, rather than assigning another ball player to my room, they assigned some random guy. This initially was no problem for me. I was not a stereotypical jock, and I had many friends who weren't athletes. The first day was okay. Turned out he worked at Domino's Pizza and would bring home 4 or 5 pizzas after work. So he shows up with some pizza and says I can have all I want. I'm thinking this might be cool, free pizza every day. Alas, things quickly took a turn. The first and second nights I noticed just a hint of that dirty feet smell. Dude didn't take his shoes off either night, so I was like, where is this coming from? But really, it wasn't that noticeable, just the occasional whiff as I said. The third night, oh my god, I walk in from baseball practice late, and he was already there playing his Xbox. He had the latest versions of PlayStation and Xbox and tons of games. I mention this so that it's clear that poverty is not to blame for the situation. Anyway, I walked into the room and I smelled a smell that I have never smelled before or since. A smell beyond description. He had simply taken off his shoes and his socks were black. They were supposed to be white. God knows the last time he had changed them, I stepped back outside to keep from gagging. For the next month, until they straightened out the dorm situation, I was only in my room for sleep. Nothing else. The only way I could sleep was to spray my pillow with cologne or something and bury my face in it. The smell hung in the air after that, even when he wasn't there. When my friends would come by to get me to go out, they would walk in and immediately turn and leave and give me a what the frick look. During my month living with my new friend, who to my knowledge never actually attended a class, I never saw him shower. I saw him in 2 sets of clothing during that month, his pizza uniform and a t-shirt and gym shorts ensemble completed by his spoiled socks. After he was relocated, I never saw him again, and I prayed that whoever was his new roommate was born without a sense of smell. We had 2 regulars that used to come into our bar. They were in their later years of life but enjoyed the atmosphere and loved chatting up anyone who would listen. Things started going south a few years back when we started getting some complaints that they would sometimes smell like urine. Then it dawned on me. I hadn't seen either of them get up and go to a washroom. Eventually, we came to find out that instead of acting like normal members of society, they would come in, drink a beer for a few hours, and just casually pee themselves while wearing diapers and not think anyone would notice. They could have been incontinent from years of holding it in while they sat and drank. My mom's ex had a buddy who ended up like that because he felt like taking a pee killed his buzz. Started wearing adult diapers at like 42 or 43, he said. The only reason I know this is because we were on a road trip and he made a point of stopping to let me take a leak and explaining why I shouldn't hold it in for any reason. I went to a friend's house and she picked up poop from her cat's litter box with her hand and then proceeded to not wash her hands. Wait, stop! What the frick? This might be the most casually messed up one here, in my opinion. My wife was a labor and delivery nurse, and she told me one time a woman was having a baby and the doctor asked the woman if she wanted that mole looked at, then poked at it with a set of hemostats. The mole moved and it was actually a cluster of crabs that the woman had on her downstairs parts. My wife was horrified, so she told me. Ugh. I had a landlord who reeked of garlic. You could smell him from a mile away. It would take the whole day to get the smell out of the apartment after he left. He was from Transylvania, so I always joked that he fled the vampires and applied garlic every day just to be safe. My grandma gave me a garlic pill to fend off the mosquitoes. It fended off everyone else too. What products do cashiers silently judge people for buying? Had a teenage girl come in with several members of her family. They all came up to the counter practically in tears and bought a pregnancy test. She then went into our bathroom to take the test, which I thought was odd, seemed like the kind of thing you'd do in the sanctity of your own home. Then the girl comes out bawling, and then her family starts bawling, and they're making a huge scene in the middle of my store. It was super duper awkward. When guys buy feminine hygiene products and have to explain that it's for his girlfriend. Dude, nobody thinks you were buying tampons for yourself. Yep, I wouldn't do it when I was younger, but when I hit my mid-20s, I realized how freaking dumb I was being. Need some enemas and tampons and nail polish? I'll pick that crap up from the store for you. Just expect me to get the wrong brands, or the right brand with the wrong product. But I'll try to get it right. Once you realize you'll probably never talk to or meet 99% of the people you ever see again, it makes doing stuff like this a lot easier. I work in a bookstore. I've had people red with shame while they bought 50 Shades of Grey and make comments about how I must think they're idiots. Look, I don't give a crap about what you buy. At least you're reading and keeping my store open. Do you also get the weakly old men who proudly slap down their adult magazine on the counter? I used to work for Borders, and those were always the nicest old men. No creepers. Every time I buy lube, I always get this feeling that the cashier thinks I'm buying it for butt stuff. Same feeling whenever I buy double-ended, penetrative adult toys. One of our customers buys anywhere from 25 to 32 bottles of laxatives a week. Every week, and not the oral kind either. Maybe he cares for a giant family of surprisingly healthy smack addicts. Despite the fact that it contains mention of a crippling substance addiction, the last suggestion was strangely wholesome, don't you think? I don't judge, but I get some good stories. I saw a guy in the contraception aisle looking absolutely baffled at the wide variety of jimmies. I'm a pharmacist and went to help. With an inward sigh, some people have no idea how to use them. He said, "I have no idea what I'm looking at. There are so many. I've been fixed for almost 20 years. But my boy's going to college and I don't want him bringing STDs or any babies home with him." He got really excited when I told him about spermicide and bought 5 to 6 dozen-count boxes. That's a good dad. Okay, quick story. I have an ultra-conservative Asian mom who never even mentioned doing the deed, ever.
When I got out of boot camp to my first duty station, everyone was getting care packages from home, cookies, civilian clothes, etc. I got one from my mom. It was about 100 jimmies. Assorted boxes with a note saying, "Please be safe and we will never talk about this package again. Love, Mom."
Bracelets that harness the healing energy of magnets.
Yeah, well, joke's on you. Blood has iron and is magnetic, and I have the power of science and the Lord.
Freshman year of high school, I was a cashier at a local grocery store. There was an upscale organic cupcake boutique in town that sold their cupcakes for about $4 each. It was ridiculous, but people still bought them. Anyway, the owner would come in every other week and buy about 20 boxes of Betty Crocker cupcake mix and frosting. She must have had like a 2,000% rate of return on those things. The cupcake boutique has since gone out of business, and the lady was an annoying soccer mum in her mid-30s, so who cares? I cashiered at Home Depot. Had a dude in his mid-20s pull up to my register with rope, duct tape, cleaning gloves, tarp, bleach, Febreze, cookies, bucket, and sponges. I rung him up. I didn't even know what he'd purchased until he came back in and just said, "Dude, I could be planning a murder and you didn't even care. What the frick? I just lost $20. Then he went to return everything except the cookies. True story. And yes, Home Depot sells cookies. They're like right next to all the chips and sodas. They're those 98-cent grandma cookies that come in packs of 2. Them things are just straight fire. Real murderers use self-checkout.
Sir, I make minimum wage. They do not pay me enough to care about what you're doing with that rope and tarp. I got judged by a cashier once. I was working in a welding and fabrication facility at the time as a repair guy. Since I wasn't one of the welders, I would often get tasked with whatever needed doing. The particular job at the time required ultrasonic testing of bends made in some tubing to ensure proper wall thickness. We had one tube of ultrasound gel. Sure enough, the tube got knocked off the table and run over by a forklift. The job was very time critical and we needed to do the ultrasounds now. A good substitute for ultrasonic gel is KY. I grabbed a fistful of petty cash and rushed over to a nearby grocery store and grabbed every tube of KY they had. I then ran up to the cashier, who then rung up tube after tube after tube. I was in such a rush that I really hadn't thought about the normal use of KY. As she was looking at me oddly and silently ringing up my purchase, I said something like, "It has been crazy at work today." The look on her face was priceless. Halfway out of the parking lot, I realized what had happened. We all had a good laugh about it at work, and I had the nickname KY for a few days. When parents with very overweight kids buy nothing but junk food. Do you judge people who are high and buy junk food? I worry sometimes. Also, can you tell I'm high when I do it? Usually, after you leave, my coworkers and I will comment about how stoned the last guy was. We'll laugh briefly and get on with our lives. We don't judge you, we mostly envy you. People being on Mary J were the easiest customers I had to deal with on the night shift. Drunks were the worst. I think we banned the wrong recreational substance. This isn't exactly the same thing, but I used to work at AutoZone. One day a customer came in and asked if there were any deals on our strongest antifreeze. I asked him if he meant the lowest temperature rating and he said no, the one with the most ethylene glycol. I was really confused and asked him what he needed it for, and he told me it was because his neighbor's kid just got kittens and they were trespassing on his property. I excused myself and went back to my boss, the store manager, and told him, and he told me I had to make the sale. I had to sell him 4 gallons of antifreeze to kill some defenseless kittens and absolutely crush his neighbor's kids. I never tried to say I hate anybody and I never wish anybody harm, but yeah, him. Not a cashier, but I worked in fulfillment for Amazon for 4 years. I can't tell you how many times I've checked out the name on the label for a shipment of questionable combinations. Memorable shipments include lube and an adult toy plus a baby Einstein video, 16 bottles of laxatives and adult diapers. Anytime someone orders Thai Rent Girls 101, what you must know about doing the deed and paying for it before coming to Thailand. In conclusion, don't ever think that buying something online means that you escape the judgment of others. I've often thought about that. I shop for several family members via my Prime account. I like getting add-on items when I can do, and do not like having items coming in all week at random, so I try to group my purchases. I've ordered combinations such as cinnamon sticks, multi-pack jimmies, mouthwash, birthday candles, tarps, and hemorrhoid ointment. Now I know someone is looking at these orders and thinking, what the frick? I mean, at least you're escaping the withering face-to-face judgment. Surely that counts for something.
A Vietnamese lady came in a day after Valentine's Day to buy candy. She bought hundreds of bags. I made a joke about how the dentist bill must be insane, and she told me how she sends the candy to orphan homes in Vietnam because they don't have candy there, apparently. Ugh, don't judge a book by its cover, guys. Picture it. October 31st, 1974. My mum sends 11-year-old me to the store for a bag of apples, and my dad needs Gillette razor blades. The cashier looks at me like I just took a dump on her conveyor belt. Not a cashier, but I do have a story. I got rectal cancer at age 28. I had my rectum removed. During recovery, I became completely incontinent, so I had to start wearing Depends, a kind of diaper. Just for clarity, I'm a tall, skinny, relatively well-dressed young woman. The teenage boy checking me out at Walmart let out a quiet, "damn," when he bagged them. "Dude, I just assume your grandma sent you to the store. I've bought them a few times and it was always for my grandma and I've never thought twice about it." The only time I really judged someone was when he came in and found a perfume he liked and bought two. I said it would probably be a good idea if you have two women in your life, thinking wife, mother, daughter, etc., to get them something different. He said, "Oh no, one's my wife, the other's for my girlfriend. If they wear the same perfume, I don't have to worry about my wife smelling my girlfriend's perfume on me." I mean, that's smart, but it's also so crappy. Once went into a Victoria's Secret to buy a Valentine's gift for my girlfriend. The cashier asked me, "Would you like to join the Bra of the Month Club?" I asked her what that was and she said, not knowing if I was married or not, "You get one bra shipped to you every month which you can give to your wife or girlfriend?" I said, "Can I get one for each of them?" And she looked at me kind of horrified until I started laughing. The only people I silently judge are the ones trying to make up a reason for me to not silently judge them. So what if you eat that whole cake by yourself? Live a little! A cashier once talked crap to my grandma when she bought pig's feet. I think they're gross too, but I don't want you talking crap to my grandma about how gross they are. Mind your business. When my friend would buy Depends, you could tell the cashier and everyone in line would judge him hard. He was a 23-year-old college kid who still peed the bed when he drank. He tried his best, man. No, he didn't wear them to parties. He tried to remember to put them on when he drunkenly got home. This led to him putting them on backwards multiple times. This effectively kept the pee out of his diaper and in his bed. Once he forgot to put them on and brought a girl home. Let's just say he convinced her that he drunkenly showered in the middle of the night. Her ride home must have been mortified. He's not my friend anymore, by the way. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I'm a clerk at a convenience store, not something I judge harshly for, but something I've noticed and I think is funny: teenagers buying protection. Most adults buying contraception just come in, grab the jimmies, pay for them, and leave. Most people are doing the deed, and adults realize that no one cares. Teenagers buying jimmies are super awkward about it though. Typical scenario, a couple comes in and they look like they're about 15 or 16. The girl hangs out by the front door, looking around awkwardly or just staring at her phone. The boy will walk up and down the candy aisle, candy on one side, health and beauty stuff on the opposite side, pretending to look at the candy, but keeping looking at the condoms to try and see what the selection is without looking like he's looking at jimmies. Bonus awkwardness if he texts his girlfriend to ask her opinion while she's standing right in front of me waiting. He'll then grab the absolute cheapest piece of candy he can find, and a box of Trojan fire and ice, every time. The way the kid wants it to look is, "I dragged my girlfriend down because I absolutely needed a single lemon head right this second, but I suppose I'll grab jimmies while I'm here." Then, after one of them pays, they'll quickly walk away with their heads huddled together, acting like they just got away with something. I always want to tell them that they don't have to treat it like something shady or sordid, and that no one gives a crap, but I'm happy they're using protection, and I worry that even mentioning it would embarrass them so much that they wouldn't come in next time. Every time this question comes up, I wonder, what makes you think I think anything about you? I think about my feet hurting, my back aching, and how long until my shift ends. You? Not so much. I'm a cashier, and this is it. The only time I think about the customers is when they're doing something actually annoying. So if you're not licking your fingers before touching the bills, being super critical about how I do things, telling me the same dumb joke I've already heard 5 times this shift, or anything generally annoying, I don't care what you buy. Or sneezing into your wad of cash, or pulling it from a sweaty crack of your body, or giving me all the soda-soaked change from your cup holders. The only time I can remember having a thought about a customer was when they brought our camouflage print lingerie with pink edging. I honestly couldn't care less if they wanted to buy it, even though I thought it was hideous, but while folding it, I couldn't get over how itchy that fabric was. I was curious about why someone would subject themselves to that. My shopping habits were judged by a cashier when I was 14. My music teacher sent me to the store for unlubricated jimmies. They're a way of keeping actors' sweat from damaging body microphones. It was a small town and the cashier knew me. She was horrified about what I was buying, and before I could explain, she insisted on calling my mother to let her know I was doing the deed. I then got to explain in a very loud voice that I was a virgin and they were for microphones. Even if I had been buying them for other stuff, I would think the smarter move on her part would be to sell them to me. If teenagers decided to do the deed, then they're going to do it regardless of how adults feel. Public shaming and denying them protection is not going to stop the deed, but can lead to other consequences. This is the correct attitude to the sheer inevitability of teens doing the deed, regardless of what the adults in their lives think about it. If they're gonna do it anyway, just make sure they're being safe. I used to work at a local pharmacy and a regular customer came in. The only items he purchased were a wrist brace and a tube of KY jelly. He must have noticed me looking at the items and he said, "I swear these are unrelated. Whatever helps you sleep at night, dude." When parents get angry at their kids for wanting a 50-pack of stickers or some cheap child's magazine, saying, "We don't have enough money for that," while paying for cigarettes and lottery tickets. Sometimes I just lie to my kids about not having money because we have so much of this random crap at home that I think I'm going to scream every time I open a drawer in the kitchen. As a parent of 6-year-old twins, I could not agree with you more. It's like every gosh darn step I take, I'm stepping on a coloring book or a random pack of some kind of bullcrap that I just said, "Fine, you can get it if you just shut the heck up about it." I used to work at Save-A-Lot as a cashier. Our client base tended to be a little lower on the economic ladder. At the first of the month, when the benefits get loaded to their cards, I always hated to see people push up a cart full of soda, chips, etc. These people also usually tended to be in poor health. I didn't really judge them, I more felt sad for them. I also didn't like seeing people who would come in with the PIN number for their card on a piece of paper. It was a small town, I know that wasn't your card. I didn't hold it against the people who had the misappropriated card, but more against the people who sold their $300 worth of food stamps for $150 so they could buy alcohol, cigs, substances, etc. The sad part was, a lot of the people selling had kids. I learned the other day that you can apparently get judged for buying alcohol at 7 a.m. The cashier was pretty vocal about it, and if I wasn't so non-confrontational, I would have told a manager. She flat out said something along the lines of, "It's a little too early for boozing up, don't you think?" 1. None of your business if I'm drinking early in the morning. 2. It was on sale during my routine trip to get milk and such. Am I supposed to just leave it and come back after 5 p.m. to buy my alcohol? However, when I got home, I realized how my entire purchase looked. I got milk, chocolate milk, Lunchables, also on sale, and a strawberry daiquiri. She probably thought I had kids or something, so I understand her concern. Kind of. She didn't have to say anything though, it really struck a nerve. That is so dumb. Just because you're buying alcohol at 7 in the morning doesn't mean you're going to go home and drink it immediately. Do you buy a week's worth of groceries and go home to eat it all right away? No! When contractors or painters would buy America's Finest or Speedwall paint, I assume they're overcharging a family or company by getting the cheapest paint possible. I'm not a painter, I'm a roofer, but hear me out. If I was to do every roof with top-of-the-line materials at every stage, I would be bankrupting families left and right. The construction game has changed a lot even in the short decade I've been playing, and the market is flooded with all sorts of products that may or may not be worth it. Navigating that minefield is supposed to be my job. I try to take homeowners by the hand, break the news to them that they can't afford Mike Holmes, and present their tiered options. But sometimes they're convinced they know more than you. They're a retired contractor who has never seen the new products, or they watch a lot of DIY Network, or they helped somebody build a deck. They're convinced that you're trying to sell them on bullcrap to pad your bottom line, and they will insist on the cheapest option, then cut things out of it. Underlayment? Don't need it. New flashing? Too expensive. Rotten eaves? We've got some wood lying around. Fiberglass shingles? What are you, a commie? Not because they can't afford better, but because they think you're trying to cheat them. And so I wind up at the lumberyard because I can't force them to do it my way, putting in bullcrap orders because that's all they're going to pay for. We sell Batman underwear that comes with an underwear cape at my work. I always have a little bit of judgment when those come through my line. Also, when old people buy leggings. Oh my god, my parents bought me these undies for Christmas. I'm 26.
Actually, they are the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles version. But what do you do with the cape? You can't wear these under anything because the cape bunches. Am I supposed to wear these over my pants? I feel bad removing the cape portion, so I've left it on so far. Not a cashier, but I shop at Whole Foods. Invariably, there will be someone in front of me. She will have some $30 snake oil supplement and an overloaded container of prepared food, the kind where you pay by the pound. She will pull out cash as she's rung up and realize that she doesn't have enough to cover both, so she takes out the snake oil and leaves the food, which cannot be resold. I assume not only is she a moron for buying that crappy supplement, but is hoping the cashier will let her keep the food once it's been voided, since it's going into the trash. As a former Whole Foods employee, these people are infuriating. Wife was buying stuff for camping: hatchet, rope, some duct tape for the hole in the tent, small shovel and matches. The cashier was looking at her and she bursts out, "Husband teed me off for the last time." The cashier's eyes bugged out and he just let her go. Wife and daughter come out and are laughing and crying. On Mother's Day, a young guy, probably too young to have kids of his own, checked out with a Mother's Day card and a box of Jimmies. I said, "You must really love your mom." And he said, "Oh God, I didn't even realize." I work at a golf course and a medium bucket costs $7 for 40 balls, while a jumbo is $13 for 100 balls. When people come in and get 2 mediums for $14, it instantly makes me think they're idiots. In case you're dumb too, 2 mediums is $1 more for 20 less balls. Ha! I work in a small hardware store, and if someone comes in to buy a plunger, and sometimes it's these young women, I wonder if they're the ones who just took a big enough crap to clog up their toilet and have to come in to get a plunger. I've had to buy a few pregnancy tests in my time, and I always switch the diamond ring my boyfriend bought me to my left hand so I don't get a look of pity. Just so you think I'm not crazy, I have a really irregular period. Sometimes it'll skip a month, sometimes I'll get 2 in 1 month, but the point is I'm on no schedule, so I have to take pregnancy tests a lot because I'm not sure if it's my weird period or pregnancy. I work at a gaming store. Anytime someone buys plastic sleeves with artwork for their cards, I judge them hardcore. They're a great seller, but I hate them. In college, I worked at a pharmacy at the camera counter. I didn't do most of the cashiering, but did occasionally. Here is a combination of items purchased by one customer that caused me to raise an eyebrow: chocolate syrup, Astroglide, children's toy handcuffs. I don't really care what you're buying, but if you buy a huge box of Jimmies and a big bottle of lube and change your mind at the last second that you don't want it, F you. Now I have to walk around the store doing returns with those things in my hands.
Hikers and park rangers, what's the scariest thing you run into in the woods? A few years ago, my brother and I were camping in Colorado. He heard a twig snap somewhere nearby and he wakes me up. We scan with our headlamps and see a huge pair of eyes staring at us through some willows. I figured it must be a bear. It kept staring at us for about 5 minutes until we turned off the lights. We were going to move camp back towards some other groups. All of a sudden, a massive moose comes charging out of the willows. Luckily, it veered off before it collided with our tent. Another time, I was hiking a trail I hike regularly with my dog, but it was totally deserted because of some rain. She was ahead of me, maybe 20 yards, when she comes to a dead stop and beelines it back down the trail, completely ignoring my calls. As I chase her, I notice an unmistakable mountain lion print. I was hiking the Adirondacks with my ex on a trail that was a loop around a lake with one trailhead exit. Early spring, so a lot of trail cleanup hadn't begun yet. We're walking about halfway to check out this waterfall, and I hear this rumbling sound that sounds like an animal stomping the ground towards us. I then hear this bizarre, rapidly increasing growl that sounds like what Hollywood uses for alien noises and fricking book it. My boyfriend tells me to hold up, but I'm crapping myself. I'm out of breath and refuse to go back the way we entered the trail. We have to march through this thick bog that was pulling our boots off to get through the other side to exit the loop. We get to the car and I'm crying at this point. The previous day was spent vomiting and eating bad food. Next vacation, we're going to a city, I moped. We'd been in the Adirondacks for the past 4 vacations, and honestly, this experience beat me down. Years later, I was listening to nature sounds on the internet, and I hear that growl. A chill went up my spine. I learned that's a real thing. It was a mating call of a ruffed grouse bearing its wings on its chest. Yep, I freaked out because of a randy bird. I was in archaeological field school, living in a tent for 6 weeks at 7,500 feet, and the closest paved road was 10 miles away. One night, I woke up to a huffing, snorting kind of sound right outside my tent. Next thing I know, whatever it was bumping my head. I froze for a second, then on pure instinct I did an overhead punch. Definitely felt contact. Whatever it was, it went away. This was on the US Forest Service grazing land, so it could have been a cow with insomnia, but it could have also been a mountain lion or black bear. Wasn't even tempted to go out and see what it was. I preferred the safety of my tent. I was hiking in a national forest with my wife and dog. The first couple of miles of trail led to a waterfall and swimming hole, so it was fairly well populated with people. We decided to hike past the waterfall, which involved a bit of a climb, enough at least to keep most people from going past the waterfall. We hiked another mile or two without seeing a single person. This whole time my dog was having a great time, happy to be in the woods and happy to walk 30 miles if we let her. Suddenly, in a particularly dense part of the trail, she stopped suddenly and stared straight ahead. She absolutely would not move another inch forward. We stopped and listened but couldn't hear or see anything unusual. The dog, though, started whining and trying to pull us on the leash back up the trail toward the swimming hole. I had never before or seen since my dog act this way, but I believe she was legitimately afraid of whatever was ahead of us. Maybe there was a bear on the trail, or a coyote, or maybe a serial killer was hiding in the woods. I'll never know because we listened to our dog and decided to get the frick out of there as fast as we could. Who knows, maybe we avoided some gruesome death deep in the woods. I'm beginning to think that a good proportion of these will either be bear-related or people being scared by the possibility of bears. Place your bets below for what percentage rate of the stories will contain Winnie the Pooh's distant cousins. Desert Park Ranger here. Volunteers at one of my parks called us to report a still smoldering, smoking car in one of our remote campsites. It was normal for stolen cars to get abandoned and burned. We went to look and gawked a few minutes while waiting for the fire department. After a couple of minutes standing there, it became very apparent there was a body in the front seat. After an additional look around, food wrappers, rope, numerous other strange items were found. It seems like whoever was in the front seat had been bound and shot. Police came and cleaned it up, didn't find any answers. We refer to that as the haunted site now. It's the most popular in that tiny park. One of our cubicle farm chiefs got a call from a guy threatening to take his own life. He said he'd had a lot of weapons and was going to end it, then gave the location close to our park. 2 of my co-workers got sent out to investigate. By the time they got there, another rangering entity had found the scene first. They told my co-workers to leave before there was a ton of complicated paperwork that they'd have to do. The guy had shot himself semi-successfully and then tried to walk for help. Large cleanup scene, felt bad for the responding park ranger. She wasn't with us, but had just dealt with her husband, another ranger, taking his own life the month before. She also found his body. But by far the scariest thing I ran into, I just moved out there and was taking care of 2 parks by myself, both closed. These parks are about 30 miles from the nearest occupied houses, and even then, those couple of homes are usually empty in the summertime. I decided to hop in my car and drive to the darker park to take in a meteor shower and learn to play my banjo, because that is totally normal and not creepy at all. I'm out there on a picnic table, plucking away, terribly, under the stars, and got this really uneasy feeling. Was that a shadow? What if someone shows up? What if someone's listening and starts singing? This is the burned car park. What if they came back? As I'm drowning in the silence with occasional string plucks to distract myself, I hear muffled voices in the brush, quick mumbles, then rustling. My heart dropped and my neck grew cold. There is no way this will be a normal interaction. My eyes struggle with the dark, scanning bushes, trying to find the shapes. The sounds grow closer and seem eerily high-pitched. Children? What the frick? Park ranger dies of a heart attack, found 3 days later still clutching banjo will be a good headline. That is the day I learned that coyotes have the run of the desert and don't worry about being quiet. 3 of them, bound through the creosote bushes with a yip or 2, pass close by me. No fricks given. This is the last time I ever played my banjo there. The Trailside Killer. In Northern California, late 70s, hiking with a friend, and I came across him at a rock outcropping on Mount Tam. He gave off a very discomforting vibe and we didn't hang around. We both independently recognized him when he was finally captured a few years later, and his picture was in the paper. If I'd been with my girlfriend, we might not be alive. He was a creepy-looking dude. A charming-looking fellow. I worked as a tree planter in northern Ontario, living in tents in very remote parts of the forest, like hours away from civilization, only accessible by logging roads. Strangest was from a fellow planter who found a backpack in the middle of this area with shoes, clothes, a wallet with a school ID, and a film camera. How it ended up there is a total mystery because this is no place for hiking or camping. Scariest for myself was waking up to my tent vestibule collapsed and a large bear claw rip which I apparently slept through, as well as turning a corner to a large wolf about 10 feet away, and returning to a spot I'd planted about 5 minutes earlier to fresh mama and bear cub prints. Realizing a bear family had sauntered behind me while my back was turned was very unsettling because you do not want to mess with a bear and her cubs. Canadian wildlife is scary, yo. The most surreal experience I had was during an off-trail hike in the Rockies in Colorado. I was extremely depressed and spending a day away from an awful ex. I wasn't really sure what my plan was, but I fell on my butt through ice into a shallow stream and I was crossing and just said, "Frick it, I'm not going back to my car." Well, just near the top of a steep hill, I almost stepped on some sort of leg bone. I was like, "Oh crap, that's cool." Until about 3 feet away, I saw several more limb bones and most of a spine between a couple of mounds. I didn't see fresh blood, but was certain it was regular territory for something that could frick me up. I kind of froze and looked around me since I didn't hear anything so far. I decided to get a few pics and then slowly left down the hill. About halfway down, I turned back up the hill because I figured I was overthinking it, and I really didn't want to go home. About 5 steps back up, and I definitely heard some sort of animal walking around the top of the hill. And I didn't stick around to see it. I slipped in the water again on my way out, though. Bears were just chilling out in our campsite in New Mexico in the middle of the night making sounds. One random guy, not in our group, literally just gets out, grabs a stick, and chases them out while screaming. Man, that guy was wild. Didn't see, but heard. My husband and I were hiking in a state park in the East Coast. It was midday during the work week, so we maybe encountered 2 other people the 3 hours we were out and about. The only sounds we heard were from ourselves, our dog, and some birds or animals. All of a sudden, I hear mild chanting. I asked my husband if he heard it too, and he nodded but signaled for me to be quiet. My dog's ears were at full alert and the hair on his back was standing straight up. We continued walking, and the noises turned into full-blown monk chanting. Think Halo Gregorian chant. It was clear as day, like I was standing right next to a speaker. To make myself feel better, I convinced myself some teens were hiding down there somewhere playing it on their phones. After 5 minutes of hearing it, it disappeared and we barely spoke a word for the last 3 miles back. Still creeps me out. There was an episode of Paranormal Witness that had this exact thing happen to some people in the woods by their house. There was absolutely no one around. Nope. I live in a beach community with a maritime forest nearby, and while hiking about 40 years ago, I found a huge sea turtle hanging by its neck from a tree. I bet the shell was 4 feet across. I figured someone was hoping to recover the shell after the flesh had rotted away, but I don't think the neck was going to hold up for that long. Definitely weird. I mean, surely that violates some sort of environmental protection law. I just hope that someone found an already deceased turtle to do that to, rather than killing one. Surrounded by crystal heads in an Australian national park at night, with no signal, they stopped us in our car at the gate. Maybe 5 of them hopped out and surrounded the car, asked us if we knew where they could get any. I had my big Becker BK knife by my side. Thankfully, they left. Working in a rainforest in Southeast Asia many years ago, one of the things we did was trap moths at night. You would sit in front of a big white sheet, with a lamp in front of it, powered by a generator, and then periodically go and see what insects had attached to the sheet. Incidentally, the insects attracted frogs, which attracted snakes, which attracted bigger things. Due to the noise and light, the trap was about a mile away from camp, so you'd be there at 3 a.m., all alone in the middle of a jungle. One cloudy night, there wasn't much happening at the 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. shift. I heard a rustle in the woods beside me. This wasn't unusual, but it was a bit bigger than I was used to hearing. The rustle came closer, and I started getting tense. It got closer still, and I was starting to think I was going to get mauled by a tiger. Suddenly, a disembodied face broke out of the tree line, screaming in an unintelligible language. I practically crapped myself, screamed a little, and the disembodied face disappeared back into the wood, issuing high-pitched giggles. It was only after my heart slowed that I realized one of the local lumberjacks had given me a jump scare using a torch under their face for spooky lighting. I wasn't even mad. It was hilarious. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. It was 3 a.m. and everyone was KO'd in their tents. I was awoken by the sound of someone, or something, walking around my tent. I hear a distant but blood-curdling scream. For the next 30 minutes, I see a light waving around outside. I thought about going out to investigate, but didn't want to die. It took me a few hours to fall asleep. The next day, it turns out a cub was poking around our campsite. My friend was hammock camping, which probably piqued the cub's curiosity. It poked a claw through the hammock and left a sizable gash on his elbow. My friend said he didn't fall asleep for 2 hours and kept shining his flashlight around in case the cub returned with its mother or something. This happened about 6 feet away from me. Was on a camping trip in the Boundary Waters in Minnesota, and we woke up in the middle of the night to this incredibly loud slap and a splash out in the middle of the lake. Sound carries really well across water. Our first fear was that someone was shooting at us, and that was absolutely terrifying. Then we heard it again, a bit closer, and one of the guys realized it was a fricking beaver slapping its tail on the water before it dove below. My last trip up there, I was awoken from a midday nap by my buddies sing-songily screaming, "Bear!" Turns out we had made camp in the middle of a berry patch, and a bear was having a feast about 10 feet from my head. Was camping with my Boy Scout troop at the time and woke during the middle of the night to footsteps and breathing. It got louder and more footsteps started. My bunkmates were up too at this point. Then we start to hear huffing and animal noises. Turns out the field our campsite was at was in the middle of an apparent cow crossing. Had to be at least 30 of them walking by at once. Definitely a scary moment to wake up to in the middle of the night, hearing a million footsteps and animal noises. FYI, cow pies were everywhere the next morning. A pack of dogs ran up on my wife and I while hiking out of the Grand Canyon at about 3 a.m. Very, very dark outside. Her and I had headlamps. We stopped, they stopped. All I saw was a bunch of glowing eyes and bushy-tailed silhouettes. After a beat, I realized they were working dogs for the reservation, so I just went, "Hey, puppers!" in the same voice I use for my dog, and they immediately went on their way. Ended up not being dangerous really, but I almost crapped myself. Was in the Big Bend National Park about 20 years ago prepping for a backpacking series presentation for REI. Big Bend is the western portion of Texas that dips downward along the bend of the Rio Grande that forms the border with Mexico. It's mixed high desert and smaller mountains, gorgeous place with a great history. I was hiking the area near Santa Elena Canyon, probably a couple of hours before sunset to try and get pics for the presentation. This area of the park opens into the comparatively flat sections of the basin, where the river broadens and the wildlife tends to be more diverse and obvious there. Hence, there I was. I was several hundred meters away from my van, which was parked in a designated lot at what passed for a trailhead at the time. As I approached the river basin near the mouth of the canyon, I saw something really unusual. So unusual, in fact, that it took a few seconds for my brain to sort the puzzle. Something was moving on the other side of the river, and it was big, man-sized, but low to the ground. The color of a deer, maybe? And shuffling along. It looked, for first impression, to be a medium-sized white-tailed doe lying on its side and moving like a snake. But that's not a thing that happens, so I moved closer to improve my line of sight. It was a mountain lion, a big cat. A big cat. It was creeping along, low-slung, hunting something that was probably no more than a stone's toss from where I was standing. I'd never seen one before, and when the visual information finally passed, I think my blood froze. Then it looked at me. I'll probably never forget that bit. You could see the little calorie calculator turning on in its eyes. I've never been so thankful for a river in my life. Granted, at this time, and maybe still, the river was very low due to drought and unauthorized, unlawful irrigation practices upstream, and you could likely cross at several points at this location with minimal risk, but it was still quite broad and definitely looked the part of a potent water barrier. Death Kitty does a series of double takes, head shifting from me to whatever the prey's location is back and forth rapidly, said calorie counter and risk calculator, trying to get a fix on this evening's menu. I die a little, maintain my facing, and begin slowly and quietly moving away. Not sure if I wasn't worth it, if the river was too much of an X factor, or if the big un just really wasn't that into me, but no chase was given, and after breaking line of sight, I was able to get back to the van just fine, with no sign of pursuit and some mild tachycardia. That was the longest short walk I've ever taken. Later that night, I was parked off the main park road in an area where big cats commonly hunted. I'll always remember being parked there, in the middle of nowhere, munching on slightly stale Oreos and a bottle of water, listening to the occasional growl or scream of a big cat peel out of the darkness, and being thankful for my relatively fortunate position on the food chain. Also, one night I hallucinated on NyQuil, a side effect I regularly experienced with the quills, after getting a respiratory illness, and I woke up screaming at a mountain at 3 a.m. at the public campsite. But that's someone else's scary camping story. Oh no, yeah, I don't care that big cats normally don't bother attacking humans. If I saw one of those, I would be sprinting for my life. Sorry, kitty, you shall not taste the flesh of YouTube narrator today. Not really a park, but we were camped on a remote beach in Northern Australia on an Aboriginal reserve. We had special permits. When we woke up in the morning, we noticed a huge trail dragging footprint where a croc had walked by our tent during the night. The croc was on the other side of the bay, assuming it was the same croc, and must have been at least 6 meters long. We packed and moved. I went running through a trail near my house one afternoon, headphones in and my mind elsewhere, just because I knew the path really well. I came around a bend. Through the gap in the trees about 20 feet in front of me, I locked eyes with a dead and rotting deer. Somehow it was postured in a way that made it look as though the corpse was staring through me. I turned and bolted out as fast as I possibly could. You should watch the movie The Ritual. Frick that movie. Still creeps the crap out of me that there are these kinds of woods where it's some kind of curse and of being guarded by some not-of-this-world kind of beast. I'm not a ranger, but I've hiked parts of the Appalachian Trail. This occurred in West Virginia, I believe. Happened about 8 years ago. Was hiking with a group. We spread out naturally based on hiking speed. I was in the middle-ish group of 4 of us, and one person had to stop to pull a tick off. Other 2, one leader, stayed with them, but I decided to hike on ahead and see if I could catch up with the lead group. The AT is extremely well marked with white blazes, so I wasn't worried about getting lost. I knew the next landmark was an old logging road, and sure enough, I hit it about a mile later. I decided I should wait for the rest of the group to catch up, so while waiting, I hiked a bit down the old overgrown road which ran perpendicular to the trail. There was a low stone wall along one side, and I was strolling along it, checking for anything interesting like artifacts and stuff, when it was like I crossed an invisible line. All of a sudden, it was like sound cut off. No birds or insects called, when seconds ago there had been multiple birds singing. Even leaves on the trees around me stopped rustling. It was just this sudden, unnatural, deafening silence. For whatever reason, I took a few more hesitant steps forward until I hit this invisible wall. It was like suddenly I was barraged by this feeling. I can only describe it as an intense unwelcome, as if I'd entered the house of someone I knew hated me, but multiplied by about 100. All of the hairs on my body stood straight up. I stopped dead in my tracks. The feeling was so strong that I didn't even want to turn my back. I couldn't see anything down the road, threatening or otherwise, that would give me this feeling, but I knew I had to leave immediately. I just knew I was not meant to be there, and if I stayed, something bad would happen. So I walked backwards slowly, never turning away from the road and trying really hard not to even blink. Finally, I crossed that invisible line again and I could hear birds singing and the leaves rustling. I didn't turn around until I heard the leader I'd left earlier asking me if there was anything cool down the road. I was like, nope, let's keep on going. Looking back, I figure it was a bear or a cougar or something just out of sight that my instincts managed to pick up on, but at the time, damn, it just felt creepy and almost paranormal. The silhouette of a massive humanoid figure, round head, no snout, at dusk, moving through the foliage at ridiculous speed. It was extremely loud, branches swinging, sticks snapping. Instinctively, I fled by foot, even though it wasn't coming in my direction. Left my ATV behind in the process. I was driven back later with others to retrieve it. Never saw it again, still don't know what it was. I was working at a remote mountaintop microwave radio site near Prince Rupert, BC in January. The road to the site was impassable even by snowcat due to deep snowdrifts. I had to be dropped off by helicopter in the morning and get picked up at the end of the day. The building was small, single-story, maybe 30 by 40 feet, windowless with a metal front door. I'm puttering away with music on, but otherwise not making a lot of noise when there's a knock on the door. I thought it was a bit odd that someone else would be up here with me, but I go to answer the door. Nobody there. I go out and look around. Nope, nothing, no prints or tracks. I figured maybe some ice had fallen and made a knocking sound. I go back inside and resume what I was doing. A couple of minutes later, there's a knocking on the door again, but longer duration this time. I open the door. Nobody. I go out and look around. Nothing. Go back to work. A minute later, knocking again. This time it sounds like someone is angrily pounding on the door to be let in. This time I open the door with my crowbar in hand. There was no doubt someone was there. Open the door, and nobody. What the frick? Step out and look around, no sign of anyone again. I get the feeling someone is watching me. I'm peering into the bush around me and I see nothing. Something compelled me to look behind me, and that's when I met the amused gaze of a raven, perched on the roof edge, centered above the front door. They squawked a happy, "Rock, rock, rock," and flapped off to the tree line. Butthole. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.